Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel and welcome to my Omnibus series. I've got so many of these omnibuses that are going to come out so that you'll be able to listen to an hour's worth of stories, which I know you're going to love. You know, the thing is that telling stories is such a fine art, and it's something that was practiced hundreds of years ago when people didn't have the technology that we have today. And everyone would gather around the fire and listen to a wonderful story. And also, what is so wonderful about a story is that personally, I think it is the best way to go to sleep. Every night when I go to bed, I always listen to stories. And that's something that parents used to do with their children. It's something that they still do with their children. There's nothing better than a good story. And so I hope you're going to enjoy this series. And before we start, I just want to say, do subscribe to my channel because you don't want to miss out on anything. Because I'm in for the long haul and I want to make sure that you get the most stunning stories to go to bed with at night or to listen to when you want to be one of those people sitting beside the fire and listening. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and let's get started. I hope you're going to enjoy the omnibus.
Dear Sarah, and all your lovely listeners, Sheila Morris felt a huge buzz of excitement when she entered the department store. Her heart began to pound in her chest very, very loudly, so much so that she could hear every single beat. This was not the sound of fear that she was hearing, but the sound of nervous exhilaration, when you're about to do something incredibly thrilling, but very scary at the same time. Like when you jump out of an aeroplane from a vast height with a parachute, or you bungee jump from a high mountainous elevation to the valley below. She felt that addictive surging spike of adrenaline literally pulsating through every single cell of her body, and the feel-good hormones like dopamine and serotonin, bringing her feelings of great euphoria that made her feel both vital and extremely alive. Sheila was predictably immaculately dressed, which wasn't unusual for her, for she was extremely particular about how she presented herself to the world, and believed emphatically that you never ever got a second chance to make a first impression. So looking great at all times was a prerequisite in her life as far as she was concerned, and even when she retired to bed at night, she made absolutely sure she put on a touch of lipstick, so that should some unforeseen event arise in the middle of the night that would require her to make an appearance, that she would invariably look good, and that was significantly important to her. On this prepossessing summer's morning, Sheila was wearing her expensive designer navy blue chinos that flattered her narrow waist and long, slender legs. She also sported a well-tailored red leather jacket that looked remarkably good with everything she wore, and over her shoulders she was wearing a stunning-looking Louis Vuitton designer bag. For Sheila would never ever own a purse that wasn't designer. That would be a blight to her wardrobe. At a brief glance, no one would suspect that such a glamorous, well-spoken woman of substantial means, such as Sheila Morris, to be harbouring such a dirty secret as she was now. For indeed there were many skeletons lying buried in Sheila's closet that if her husband knew about, it would make her feel decidedly ashamed. Sheila was one of the well-to-do in society, who mixed in the right social circles and said the right things at parties, where she mixed with some of society's most elite. Sheila had come from an extremely privileged background, with wealthy affluent parents who had made all their money from pharmaceuticals. Growing up, she had attended very expensive private schools as a girl in Washington state, and her parents had given her her heart's desires, most especially her doting father, for Sheila only had to look at her father through adoring eyes, flash her eyelashes a little and say, "Please, Daddy," and he would refuse her nothing. So growing up she had been somewhat precocious and extremely spoilt. Sheila currently lived in a beautiful part of Washington state, in a smart, state-of-the-art bungalow that she and her husband had designed for themselves by an esteemed up-and-coming architect. Sheila drove a top-of-the-range Land Rover, had a bulging bank balance, and was married to a highly esteemed barrister. She had an 11-year-old daughter called Lily, who went to a very expensive private school like she had done as a child, Ostensibly with Sheila Morris's very blessed, affluent lifestyle, you wouldn't believe that a woman who wanted for absolutely nothing and could afford high-end, very grandiose overseas holidays every year, where she'd visit fabulous places like Monaco or enjoy exclusive skiing holidays in the Swiss Alps, would be capable of doing what she was about to do now. But not everything you see with your naked eye is what it seems, despite what you may have been led to believe. And this was certainly the case for Sheila Morris, who wore innocence on her face like little Bambi in the movies, and her glamorous lifestyle spoke of a woman who was both dignified and elegant, who would do nothing that would ever sully her unblemished reputation. But you would be wrong about all of that. Sheila Morris couldn't help herself. Since she'd been a little girl, she'd got a thrill from stealing things at every given opportunity. The truth was she didn't really want the things she stole, but it was the stealing itself that made her somewhat come alive inside. She knew, of course, what she was doing was intrinsically wrong, and would have absolutely appalled and disgusted her husband Vince, if he had known about it at all, that is. But it would seem her slippery hands were more nimble than quicksand, along with the still small voice in her head that urged her please not to do it. As far as Sheila was concerned, that nagging, irritating voice inside her that reprimanded some of the things she chose to do, with a silent, urgent conviction, should be ignored at all times. How perfectly dull it would be to live life so obediently, sticking by the rules all the time so stringently. For Sheila, listening to that wizened voice inside her that served her greatest good, found that utterly boring, and it would certainly make her plush life become desperately mundane. For Sheila Morris, stealing was like playing the most artful game, for there was always a possibility that you could get caught, and that thought in itself was incredibly thrilling. Sheila loved living on the edge, doing things she knew she ought not be doing. Even as a young child, she had loved stealing things from her own mother, and seeing her mother going absolutely frantic as she looked aimlessly for the object that she was missing, wondering where on earth it had got to, for things just didn't vanish into thin air in front of you. Or did they? Sheila would delightfully watch her mother, who believed she was going completely mad, for she would search frantically in every nook and cranny of their Queen Anne house that they lived in at the time for the missing object in question. Sheila's mother soon resigned herself to the fact that things went missing in their household very mysteriously, for reasons she couldn't understand. She had no way of knowing, of course, that Sheila, her own daughter, was behind these bizarre, enigmatic disappearances, as shoeboxes of her mother's missing things were clandestinely stashed and stored away in the back of her wardrobe, far away from her mother's keen eyes. Sheila would sometimes make objects that had gone missing for months on end reappear in the most bizarre, peculiar places, for that was all part of the thrill of this lovely game. Ostensibly, Sheila's mother was confounded to find the brooch she'd been missing for ages, lying among the canned peaches she'd canned the previous year. Then she also found the slippers she'd been missing, neatly folded up in a towel and placed in an old sports bag that she hadn't seen for a long time. Then there were 3 of her favourite lipsticks lying together in an envelope in her desk. Sheila's mother had been so perturbed by these bizarre events concerning things that went missing, that suddenly made a reappearance again, that she'd come to the firm conclusion that something outer-worldly was going on in their household. Either that, or she really was losing her mind. Sheila's mother brought a well-renowned psychic medium around to their house. She'd been convinced that a ghost was stealing her things and putting them back in bizarre places. Sheila's mother knew that the elderly couple who'd lived in the Queen Anne house before they'd purchased it had both passed away on the premises, for she had reason to believe that possibly their spirits were messing around with her. Maybe it was a game for them to make all these disappearances happen, or perhaps it represented something infinitely more menacing and insidious. She couldn't be sure about that. It occurred to her that maybe they even wanted her out of their house, because perhaps they still believed in death, that the house belonged to them. The psychic medium that Sheila's mother had invited over to the house was called Miriam Fenter. She told Sheila in no uncertain terms that the previous couple, who had died in the house, were definitely not haunting the place, for she could not pick up on their deceased energy, If they were still around, I would know about it. No, there is nothing in your house, I can assure you of that. Of course, this had come as a relief to Sheila's mother. But then at the same time, if these things that were going missing had nothing to do with a ghost, then why were they disappearing? Could she be losing her mind? And she certainly didn't want to entertain that thought. Miriam Fenter claimed that she had never felt any paranormal energy in the household at all, which mystified Sheila's mother all the more. If the ghosts of the previous occupants were not messing around with her, then who was? It never occurred to Sheila's mother that her daughter was pulling her own strings like a puppet, and getting a great deal of entertainment and pleasure from doing so in the process. Sheila had thoroughly enjoyed observing her mother's utter confoundment, and privately giggled about it all, especially when her mother suddenly came to the conclusion that if things weren't being moved around by a ghost, maybe the problem really did rest with her, and perhaps she was growing increasingly absent-minded, and misplacing things all the time, putting them in the oddest of places. Sheila's father had told his wife that no, of course, she wasn't going mad, and that being absent-minded from time to time was not a big deal at all. But his reassuring words did little to comfort Sheila's mother, who thought that she was going mad, until one day Sheila left home, and things no longer began to disappear like they had done in the past. But even so, Sheila's mother never put two and two together to make four. She never connected the dots. For some incongruous, unfathomable, rather paradoxical reason, Sheila felt empowered when she took things from people that did not belong to her, especially when it left those people confused, bewildered, and confounded. When Sheila Morris attended church with her husband Vince seated at her side, and the pastor began to preach about the importance of integrity in front of a large congregation of people, Sheila would inwardly physically squirm, sitting there rather uncomfortably in her seat, looking the picture of innocence, on the outside of course, as she sat there with her Bible wide open on her lap, while her spirit would be fiercely convicted of all the duplicitous things she had done. It would seem the things she had stolen over the years from department stores and various friends' houses would rudely flash in her head, rather like a slideshow. It was in those moments of great conviction when Sheila's guilty conscience was severely pricked, and then she would say to herself very sternly, "I'm never going to steal ever again. It's over from now. I'm a person of great integrity, and I have no intention of taking things that don't belong to me." And in those moments, she really meant every word of it. But some addictive behaviours are almost impossible to shake off. By all accounts, when Monday morning arrived, like a brand new artist's slate that needed to be painted, Sheila would find the urge to steal had become like an overwhelming, insatiable itch that she was desperate to scratch, and nothing could stop her from doing so. Sheila was not so skilled or proficient at thieving that she'd never ever been caught. Indeed, she'd had her moments when things had been touch and go for a while. On one occasion she'd been caught red-handed by the security in a store. But over the years Sheila had astutely learned from her grievous mistakes. She had become even more sneaky at what she did, so it was rare for her to get caught. But there were moments when fate didn't always deal her the best hand of cards, and she had to find her way to wiggle out of difficult situations to ensure that she didn't end up with a criminal conviction. For certainly if that happened, she very much doubted that her noble husband Vince, a man of great substance and character, would ever talk to her again. On one occasion Sheila had been standing over a large basket of expensive designer jewellery that had been stashed together, as all the items in question were marked with 50% off the original marked price. Sheila had been examining the jewellery, pretending to admire it in the mirror, as she tried on countless necklaces and bangles. She enjoyed playing the role of an interested customer, looking for a good deal. Indeed, the whole charade she'd pull off in the store was part of a clever, cunning, deceptive stage act that Sheila employed whenever she went shoplifting. Sheila loved it when she had an audience, which could be a security guard occasionally skimming his eyes over her, or possibly a shop assistant glancing at her from time to time, to see if his or her customer might possibly need help, never suspecting for a single moment that this affluent customer, who looked as if she might actually drive a Rolls-Royce, was up to no good. For Sheila, any eyes that might be watching her added to all the excitement and made the act of slipping an item in her bag very sneakily all the more titillating, because she needed to be so sleight of hand that no one would know she'd actually stolen the item, and being that quick with the fingers was an art form as far as Sheila was concerned, and she was good at what she did, for she'd been pinching things for a very long time and had learnt some hard and fast lessons that appeared to have served her well. This was an unassuming day, just like any other, but it was a day that Sheila was not likely to forget, as she examined all the strings of colourful jewellery in the basket at the store. Sheila had seen a security guard watching her. She had looked up at him and innocently flashed him a warm smile. He had quickly looked away, his skin flushing a bright pink colour, for he was a tad embarrassed. For even the security guard does not want to be caught watching you, or be seen to observing you, for that makes him seem less professional and more obvious. When Sheila thought the security guard had all but looked away from her, for a brief, vital second, after she had coquettishly flashed him a dazzling, rather flirtatious smile that had made him conspicuously blush, Sheila thought she had him by the short and curlies. Now was the ideal moment to strike, while the iron was very hot. She took that sizzling, beautiful second to drop a bundle of jewellery into her wide-open purse, which she did with a stylish air of nonchalance, and then steadily marched down the escalator with her elegant deportment, head held high and shoulders right back. Sheila was about to exit the shop, wearing an expression of perfect innocence on her made-up face, but alas, she had been apprehended by the security guard she had seen earlier, who had been watching her very intently, more intently than Sheila had initially realized. He was obviously perceptively astute, very accomplished at his job, and Sheila had completely underestimated him. The security guard marched deliberately towards her, wearing an arrogant, rather stern, no-nonsense expression on his face, with a kind of "I gotcha" look that suggested he had not been fooled by Sheila's artful shenanigans for a single second, and knew the cunning schemes women like herself employed in order to get away with their guileful acts. Sheila could see that the security guard looked somewhat smug, rather self-important, as if he was in the act of self-congratulating himself for being so quick to spot Sheila's sleight of hand, and was clearly thrilled to have caught her in the act of stealing. "Ma'am," he said, "will you please come with me?" "Why must I come with you?" Sheila had demanded to know, glaring at the security guard impertinently. She accentuated the posh, privileged trill of her voice, for this had served her well over the years, for it often made people doubt themselves, and she hoped sincerely it would intimidate the security guard, because of course someone coming from her privileged, affluent background, who spoke the Queen's English almost with perfection, with a distinct plum in her mouth, couldn't possibly be accused of stealing. I mean, the idea was ludicrously insane, was it not? "Ma'am, I believe that you have taken some jewellery, and you have it in your purse. It doesn't belong to you," said the security guard very soberly. "I need you to come with me right now. You have committed a criminal offence, for you have taken property that does not belong to you, without purchasing it first." Sheila had looked at the security guard with a condescending air of superiority. "Goodness gracious me! You think I stole something? Is that what you're trying to imply? Good grief! I'd never do something like that. I could take you to court, young man. Sue you for defamation of character. I'm a woman of high moral standing, I'll have you know, who would never demean myself by doing something like that. Stealing is completely beneath me." The security guard did not look remotely intimidated by Sheila's unambiguous threats, but insisted she followed him to the manager's office at once. And so it was, with her tail between her legs, Sheila had followed the security guard to the back of the store, up a long flight of terracotta-coloured steps, into a little office which contained a couple of ugly-looking filing cabinets, a poky desk, with a couple of flimsy chairs that looked like they belonged in a yard shed rather than in an office. There was a calendar of American garden birds on the wall, which looked as if it was long since out of date, and appeared to be warping and buckling up at the sides, as no one had replaced the calendar for several years. The pale buttercup-coloured room had a stale scent of old cigarettes, and the desk was meticulously tidy, as if whoever owned it had a touch of what Sheila would describe as OCD, for everything on the desk, from the pencils to books, was stashed in such straight lines that Sheila wanted to mess up the desk a little because it was far too ordered for her. Sheila was told to take a seat on the hard-looking, uncomfortable chair with wobbly legs that would unlikely have supported a woman of large stature or size without breaking or falling apart. So it was a good job that Sheila was slim, although she was secretly wishing she wasn't at this particular moment in time, for it would have given her a great deal of pleasure to break the chair and hand the broken parts back to the manager, accusing him of endangering her safety by allowing her to sit on such a flimsy piece of furniture, and sue the pants off the store as a result. The security guard had stood in the doorway, watching her for a long while he waited for the manager to arrive, and then he promptly left, after the manager entered, and he'd exchanged a few muted words with him that Sheila had not heard, but she could easily guess what they were saying about her. She could see the security guard looked all puffed up with his self-importance, as it appeared as if he was being congratulated by the manager for being so sharp and observant on the job. Sheila had heard the security guard mumble under his breath, "It's my job, sir. It's what I do. I'm highly observant. I know her kind only too well." It was very clear to Sheila that earlier on, when the security guard had initially apprehended her, he had been talking to the manager at some length on a walkie-talkie system, so no doubt the manager had been fully informed about what Sheila had done, and all about the grubby jewellery she had pilferaged from the store that was now lying in her purse. Sheila had sat at the desk, her back as straight as a pencil, her deportment as intimidating and self-assured as possible, before the manager had finally arrived. In truth, every long-winded second had seemed like a lifetime to Sheila Morris, for the hands of time stood perfectly still. The small office had become almost insufferable for her, for Sheila hated and abhorred small, confined spaces that made her feel decidedly trapped. She was tempted to get the hell out of the place, run down the staircase, and right out of the store, but she didn't want to cause a scene, so she remained dutifully anchored to a rather rickety office chair, all the while her feet, that were very clammy, were sweating profusely in her court shoes, and tapped the floor rather nervously. Her heart raced a dime to a dozen. Sheila seriously feared the repercussions of anyone finding out about what she had done, most especially her husband Vince, as reputation in Sheila's elite world was absolutely everything, especially in the circles she mixed in. If word got out that she was a thief, well, Sheila couldn't imagine how she'd cope with that, and how people would react to that information. Luckily for Sheila Morris, the manager had been all but putty in her hands, persuadably malleable, you could say. Sheila had known how to manipulate him, with a mastery that was very calculating but proficient, for Sheila was very good at reading people's body language and figuring out what exactly made them tick. The manager was a slightly rounded man, possibly in his early 30s or so, with a slight overhang of the belly, probably caused by lack of exercise. He had a moustache and wore round spectacles on his eyes. He sat down opposite Sheila, and she was surprised the chair supported his weight, but one of these days she was certain he'd break the thing. The manager's brown eyes were flecked with green around the iris area, and they were fixed steadily on her. "Ma'am, will you please open your purse for me?" he had said. "My security guard has reported to me that you are carrying stuff on your person that does not belong to you, and is the property of the store." Sheila shifted uncomfortably in her seat, and then obliged the manager's request by pulling out a tangle of costume jewellery, none of it that she would have ever worn, as Sheila thought it was both cheap, tacky, and extremely vulgar, but it had been fun to steal, until she had got caught, that is, for she had not anticipated that happening on this very benign Monday morning. The jewellery was lying across the table, along with other supercilious items of Sheila's that included dark glasses, a wallet, some lipstick, a notebook, a chewed-up pen, along with cough lozenges and a few tissues. "Goodness gracious me!" Sheila said, feigning surprise, as the jewellery spilled out onto the desk, making a clanking sound and a decided mess. Sheila's eyes widened as she pretended to be nonplussed by the jewellery in her purse that was now spread across the desk in full view of the manager, who regarded the jewellery with an expression of great distaste. Sheila suddenly realised the manager was the one who owned the desk and obviously suffered from OCD. So the jewellery he was seeing that was thrown around the place indiscriminately was making him visibly squirm, and Sheila inwardly smiled as he arranged the jewellery on the table in a straight line. And once he'd done this, his heart rate appeared to slow down, and his breathing became more comfortable. Sheila looked up at the manager, with 2 burgeoning frown lines developing between her brows. "How odd," she said. "I can't think where all this costume jewellery came from, or how it got into my purse in the first place. I do recall looking at it in the baskets that was for sale. It was going for half price, you know, but so dreadfully tasteless and vulgar it is. I had no interest in it at all. I mean, who on earth would buy stuff like this? I'm not surprised it's going for half price. I'd never ever wear anything this tasteless. I personally like to buy my jewellery from a real jewellery store. I don't appreciate or even like fake stuff of any kind. I can't imagine how on earth it got into my purse like this. Maybe without thinking I put it there. I had other things on my mind, you see. I do tend to get easily distracted. That's what must have happened here. But I would never ever willingly steal anything. I'm a very wealthy woman, you know. I could afford to buy much better jewellery for myself than this. My husband is a barrister. If I was to take something, credit me with some taste, would you? This jewellery is so cheap-looking, I'd never buy it. I'm telling you, I do not know how it got into my purse. Maybe someone other than myself put it there, just to get me into trouble. There's some weird people out there, you know. Ma'am, my security guard caught you putting this jewellery in your bag. He saw you do it himself with his own eyes. He said you did it very sneakily and very quickly. You did it with deliberate intent. You are being caught stealing, ma'am, and in this store we take such unacceptable behaviour very seriously indeed. We do not tolerate shoplifting of any kind. Under the circumstances, we have a zero-tolerance policy towards it. I'm going to have to call the police, who will take you to the police station, where you will be charged and have your fingerprints taken." The manager was so prim and proper, Sheila couldn't help thinking to herself, he was one of those dreadfully dull men that abided by all the rules in everything he did. She imagined that when he was a schoolboy, he'd likely have been the teacher's pet, completely incapable of being seen to do anything wrong. And yet, despite the manager's goody-two-shoes veneer that he showed to the world, Sheila Morris was convinced even he was capable of being manipulated. The manager pulled out his cell phone to call the police, and Sheila put her perfectly manicured hand on his arm to stop him. "Oh, but you don't want to do that," Sheila said persuasively, pulling out a leather wallet from her purse, which she had replaced after she'd emptied it out on the table. She pulled out a couple of $1,000 from the wallet in cash, hurriedly placing them in the manager's hands. At first the manager's eyes had bulged open in surprise. His moustache had twitched rather nervously. Sheila could see he liked the look of all that money, and enjoyed the feeling of having $2,000 of cash placed in his hand, and she knew when people held money in their hands, they were often reluctant to part with it. "Are you married, Mr. Lambert, by any chance?" Sheila asked, looking at the badge on his lapel to affirm his name. People always felt incredibly important when you addressed them by their name. The personalization always had a softening effect on people, making them a whole lot more malleable and more kindly disposed towards you. "I've got a girlfriend," the manager muttered. "But what has that got to do with you, ma'am? I don't bring my personal life to the office." "But of course you don't. Well, I'm not surprised you've got a girlfriend, Mr. Lambert," said Sheila coquettishly, ignoring his innuendos. "I mean, a good-looking man such as yourself, Mr. Lambert, would easily be snapped up by so many women. You're very attractive, so your girlfriend is very lucky to have you, if you don't mind my saying so. You're a very debonair, well-polished man. Anyone can see that. Oh, can you imagine, Mr. Lambert, what you could do with the money that I've put in your hand? Your girlfriend would appreciate being taken out somewhere special for dinner. And imagine if you bought her something beautiful. She'd be so appreciative of that. It would mean a lot to her if you spoilt her like that." Sheila leaned forward on the desk, her eyes now meeting Mr. Lambard's. She could see the hardness on his face was melting away, rather like chocolate in a cast-iron griddle. Her words appeared to be breaking down the fortress he had put up between them. "Mr. Lambard, no one need know about this little transaction between us," said Sheila Morris, pointing a manicured finger at the stash of notes in the manager's hand that he appeared to still be holding, rather stiffly at that. "Let's just say, Mr. Lambard, this will be our little secret. If you take the money from me, then you can't call the police. It's a fair deal, don't you think? I never wanted the jewelry anyway. It was all just a game to me. The only pity is that I got caught. But it happens sometimes, doesn't it? It's just one of those unfortunate things." "Are you bribing me, ma'am?" asked the manager, raising a cynical brow behind his round spectacles that made his eyes appear all the more round. "Absolutely I'm bribing you," said Sheila Morris shamelessly. "I mean, this is a win-win situation for the both of us, is it not? You get something generous for pretending that none of this happened, and then you can spoil your girlfriend." "Very well. We've got a deal," said the manager. "It's our secret, and it must stay that way. I will admit my girlfriend would appreciate a slap-up meal somewhere, and a little pampering. But this can't happen again. Do you understand?" Sheila Morris coquettishly purred like a cat. "Of course I understand, Mr. Lambard. You're a very good man, and your girlfriend is very lucky to have you. I'm glad you've seen sense, Mr. Lambard. And of course, I assure you, this will never happen again, not in your store." The manager had promptly put the money in his jacket pocket, but his voice became firm and authoritative. "You've been warned, man. You're very lucky I'm not going to call the police to have you prosecuted, which I should have done. But I will let you off just this once, given I'm a reasonable man. But I must ask you to leave the premises forthwith." Sheila had happily obliged him, once again feeling a sense of empowerment at having been able to bribe herself out of a rather sticky, precarious situation. But it had been touch and go for a short moment. Thank God the manager had been easily bribed, as the last thing Sheila needed was a criminal record, or for her 17-year-old marriage to go up in a pile of smoke. Sheila had not only stolen from her mother in the past, or department stores and boutiques, but she'd even stolen from close friends, for it gave her a head rush of adrenaline to cause chaos in her wake, rather like a sudden tidal wave that you never saw coming and were ill prepared for. On one occasion her friend was opening a few cans of chickpeas with a tin opener to make hummus to serve with pita bread and tzatziki for lunch that day. But when her back was turned, Sheila had surreptitiously slipped the can opener straight into her purse and had got a kick at seeing her friend's bemusement in looking everywhere for the tin opener. "It was right here! The tin opener was right here! I was opening these cans, wasn't I? So where has my tin opener got to? Where the hell is it?" "Well, I saw you opening the cans myself with the tin opener, but I honestly didn't notice where you put it," Sheila said. Sheila's friend had sauntered around the kitchen, looking in every nook and cranny for the can opener, while Sheila was inwardly enjoying a big chuckle to herself on her friend's account. She knew it was naughty of her to do this, but she couldn't help herself. She loved ruffling up people's feathers and making them feel as if they were completely losing the plot. Sheila had helped her friend look everywhere for the tin opener, but it was nowhere to be found, because of course it was discreetly tucked away in Sheila's purse. She enjoyed the frustrated pandemonium she invariably caused when things went missing, but her friend had not suspected for a single moment that Sheila's slippery fingers were responsible for pinching the tin opener, where it was laid to rest and left to gather dust in a box in a closet in Sheila's daughter's playroom, for everything Sheila took was of no earthly interest to her at all, and sometimes she had fun by returning the item and putting it in a bizarre place, like she'd done growing up as a girl. A year later she had returned her friend's tin opener, and on a phone call her friend had told her that she had uncovered the tin opener in a bizarre place. "Do you remember when my tin opener went missing?" she had told Sheila. "Well, you won't believe it. I found it after an entire year has gone by. I can't believe it. I found it in the laundry basket, would you believe?" "Well, isn't that strange?" Sheila had said. It was on a somewhat modest, very unassuming Monday morning that Sheila Morris's wily attempts at stealing would be put to the test again, as sometimes, even if you are a proficient, rather slick thief, you can come unstuck, especially if your foxy plans become unhinged. Sheila Morris had entered the department store. It wasn't very busy on that Monday morning, not like it usually was. She looked around prudently from the left to the right, and took into account the location of all the security cameras, as that was something she always did as a matter of routine. Sheila had no idea what she was going to steal today, which made this adventurous opportunity that stretched out before her, like an uncharted treasure map, to be explored, all the more exciting. She walked towards the elevators with her normal elegant grace and poise, and steadily made her way up 2 floors, and then she found herself on the 3rd floor, that was devoted to women's sleepwear and lingerie, and in the far corner was the bedding section, where pillows, duvet covers, sheets and pillowcases were sold. But on this day Sheila had no interest in them. She wouldn't get very far stuffing a duvet cover into a slim purse and getting away with it. She did have her limitations, no matter how qualified she had become at pilferaging. Sheila sashayed boldly towards the sleepwear section, like a woman with a driven purpose. The adrenaline surged through her system as she sensed it wouldn't be very long before she lifted something off the shelves and guilefully slipped it into the hungry open gullet of her purse that was longing for a feed. Her heart jiggled around in her chest very nervously, like it always did when she sensed the moment of her sneaky deed was very close to being fulfilled. Sheila found herself physically drawn, like iron filings to a magnet, towards the gorgeous section of designer silken nightdresses on display that didn't come cheap, were marked with the label Sally Markham, who Sheila knew was an up-and-coming designer, making quite a name for herself in the fashion world. A young woman who was clearly in charge of overseeing the lingerie department section came trotting over to Sheila with a warm smile on her pretty fresh face, with a nose covered in a splattering of pale freckles. She was a young woman, possibly in her early 20s, with dark brown hair that in certain lights showed off a gorgeous auburn hue, which was a colour Sheila had seen in horses before. The young lady was dressed in a stylish pair of black pants and a matching well-fitting jacket that was nipped tightly in at the waist. This was accentuated by a crisp white cotton shirt, where she wore a gold name badge on her collar, which read the words Jenna Fletcher. "Hello, ma'am. Can I help you?" she asked politely, with a bright, friendly smile that Sheila realized was genuinely sincere, unlike some shop assistants she had come across over the years, who smiled on command and wore that smile like a scarf around their neck that was far from genuine. "No, I'm fine," said Sheila. "I'm just looking at these lovely nightdresses. They're terribly pretty, are they not? I really love the lace fringes around the edges, and the silkiness of the material. It's so soft to the touch." "Well, they are very lovely," said the sales assistant. "You've got very good taste, if you don't mind my saying so, ma'am. If I could afford a nightdress like that, I'd wear it every single night and go to bed feeling like the Queen of Sheba herself. Sally Markham is an up-and-coming designer who specializes in sleepwear, I'm told." "Yes, I've heard about her before." "If you don't mind my saying, ma'am," said the sales assistant with a demure smile on her face, "but I think the red nightdress would look particularly good on you. It would complement your golden skin and brown eyes. You would definitely be a size small," she said, pulling out a red nightdress from the hanger that was surrounded with black lace and looked extremely sensual and provocative. Something that Sheila's straight-laced husband Vince would likely find a little titillating for his heart to handle, which was why Sheila more than often wore men's pyjamas to bed. "Would you like to try it on, ma'am?" asked the saleslady, her face brightening. "Let me tell you, if you wear that for your husband, he's going to be a very happy man indeed." She giggled. her eyes lighting up with such enthusiasm. "Many men have a thing about red in my experience." Sheila Morris shook her head. "No, I'm fine for the moment, thank you very much. But I will let you know if I need anything." "Well, I'm right over there, at the corner," said the lady, pointing to the sales counter, where there was a cash register on display. "Call me, ma'am, if you need anything at all. You need only ask. As you can see by my name badge, my name is Jenna Fletcher." "Thank you, Jenna," said Sheila, giving the sales assistant an appreciative nod. She watched her scurry away to her position behind the counter, where she busied herself with a large pile of pink vests, which she was separating into different sizes. Occasionally she looked up in Sheila's direction, flashing her a bright, sunny smile, as Sheila continued to feign interest in the nightdresses on display. The nightdresses certainly had a hefty price tag on them, but Sheila didn't care for any of them, and she chuckled as she thought about how Vince would react if he was to see her wearing something as skimpy as this. He'd probably close his eyes and tell her to put on something decent. He always told her she looked irresistibly sexy in men's pyjamas, for it emphasized her femininity far more than any silk or lace ever would, and she believed him on this one. To all intents and purposes, the urge to steal one of the nightdresses on display and stuff it in her purse became all too overwhelming. Sheila skimmed through the large rack of nightdresses, pretending to look at each individual one, and admire all the different colours, of which there were a multitude, from French blue to emerald greens and chocolates. Occasionally the young woman would look up at her and smile again. Sheila could feel the adrenaline building up in her bloodstream, pumping furiously through her system. So much so, in fact, that her entire body began to pulsate and tingle. Then the urge to take one of the nightdresses became absolutely insatiable. Sheila quickly stuffed a red silken nightdress into her purse. She nervously looked around herself to see if anyone had spotted her doing this, but nobody appeared to be around, and she inwardly drew in a deep breath. Sheila proceeded to make her way through the lingerie section towards the elevator, as casually as she could, as picking up speed would only emphasize the fact that she had something to hide and draw attention to herself, and she was eager to get out of the shop as quickly as she could. The truth was, at this point, when she was about to leave the lingerie section, her heart was a-flutter, almost as if thousands of butterflies had taken up residence in her chest. Sheila briefly glanced at the shop assistant Jenna and nodded at her, and she was about to reach the escalator when all of a sudden a security guard came charging towards her, with a grim "I gotcha" expression written on his face. "Oh no, please God, no," thought Sheila, her heart screaming in horror, for in this precise moment she realized she'd been caught red-handed. But to her surprise, the young assistant, who called herself Jenna Fletcher, came rushing to her aid, and this she had not expected at all. "Sid! Please stop, Sid!" said Jenna, rushing up to him, making an apologetic face. Don't arrest this customer, Sid. No, she hasn't taken anything illegally. If you must know, she's a regular of mine. Comes here all the time. A very special customer she is. I know her extremely well. She's buying a red nightdress from me. I told her to keep it in her purse for the time being, because she wants to shop around the store to see if she wants anything else. I couldn't find a basket around the place, so I just told her to keep things in her purse, and then she can buy everything together. She wasn't nicking anything. You got that wrong." Sid the security guard did not look remotely amused, which of course was understandable. "Why didn't you tell me about this, Jenna? You can't do this. We don't do things like this around here in this store. If you didn't have a basket for your customer, you should have told her to wait here and gone and got her one. I could have falsely accused her of stealing. A customer must pay for their items straight away, or other than that carry them around in a basket and pay for everything together. But if she puts unpaid items in her purse, it's easy for me to assume that she's stealing." "Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am," said Jenna, looking at Sheila with an expression of exaggerated apology on her face. "I should have done things the correct way. Sid is absolutely right about that. This is all my fault. I can get you a basket for your nightie if you prefer, so you can see if there's anything else in the store you might like to purchase. So I can ring them all up for you. All your items, that is. Either that, or you might like to come over to the counter to just buy the nightdress from me right now. I think, Jenna, in the circumstances, I should probably buy the nightdress right away. After all, she said, casting the security guard a withering look, I wouldn't want to be falsely accused of being a thief, would I? Sorry about that, ma'am, said the security guard, looking very sincere. This was not your fault, ma'am. It was Jenna's fault entirely. You can't do this again, Jenna. You'll get me and the customers in trouble. I know, Sid. I'm so sorry. I won't do it again. I don't know what I was thinking, said Jenna. I guess it's been one of those mornings when everything has got on top of me. And as I say, I just wasn't thinking straight. My head's been all over the place, sorting out the vests over here. They've only gone and put the wrong labels on the items. Sid looked frustrated and almost a little disappointed that he hadn't successfully apprehended a shoplifter. He frowned at Jenna and said, As I was saying, Jenna, don't do this again. Or it'll not just be me with my head on the chopping board. It'll be you too. Come with me, ma'am, said Jenna, beckoning for Sheila to follow her to the counter. Sheila's face flushed red with embarrassment as she pulled out the red silken nightdress. It was so humiliating getting caught red-handed like this, and the fact that even the sales assistant had known she had stolen the nightdress was all the more disheartening for her. Was she losing her touch, she wondered? Sheila felt like a chastened dog whose owner had put its nose in its own vomit. It wasn't a good feeling at all. Her previous adrenaline surge had seemingly flatlined. She was feeling like a punched-out yoga ball that had lost all its air. She straightened herself out, trying to compose herself. She ran a self-soothing hand over her red leather jacket, as if patting herself, reassuringly, like you might do to an alarmed cat or dog. If Jenna Fletcher had not come to her defence, things could have gone badly pear-shaped. Sheila Morris was not stupid. She knew only too well that one day her luck might actually run out. Everyone knew that on life's journey there were ups and downs along the way, and what goes up invariably has to come down at some point. Sheila was terrified about how her prim and proper husband Vince would react if he ever knew about any of this. He was disgusted by thieves and criminals of any kind, so if the man had the slightest notion what his wife got up to in order to amuse herself, to relieve her boredom, and to bring a thrill to her life, he'd likely believe he didn't know the woman he'd married at all. He would not be the kind of man that would ever understand why Sheila would sneakily take something that she could well afford to buy. How would Sheila ever be able to explain to her husband Vince the electrifying exhilaration that suddenly overcame her when she took things that didn't belong to her and clandestinely stuffed them in her purse? Furthermore, she'd been doing this all her life, just to get her kicks. It was like a drug that gave her a euphoric high, but the come-downs were never pleasant. But when there's a high, there's always a low. The sales assistant picked up her nightdress and smiled warmly at Sheila, knowing full well that Sheila had attempted to steal the nightdress. As I was saying, you've got really good taste, ma'am. I told you the red nightdress would look very good on you, didn't I? I'm glad you decided to buy it today, she said, folding it very gently in layers of tissue paper and putting it into a box. Your husband is going to love you in this little number. My guess is you won't get any sleep tonight once he's seen you modelling this for him. Yes, it is rather lovely, said Sheila. But just so you know, my husband would hate it if I wore something like this. He's rather straight-laced, you see. Well, then he's a fool if he doesn't appreciate you wearing this for him, said the sales assistant with a laugh. My guess is you're going to look absolutely gorgeous in this. Oh, goodness gracious me, ma'am, look at this, said the sales assistant, reading the label on the nightdress that she was about to remove. This is an extra, extra large. You took the wrong size for yourself. I guess it's an easy mistake to make, but this nightdress would swim on you. I'll go and get you a small, shall I? That's very kind of you, dear. Sheila couldn't give a toss what size the red nightdress was. She'd put it away with all the trinkets she stole over the years, so it would gather dust in the playroom closet, where it would never see the light of day again. But then again, the sales assistant didn't need to know that. And then it occurred to Sheila that because of Jenna's great kindness towards her, she should leave the nightdress to her, with the manager, claiming it was a surprise present for her, as Jenna would also have been as small. When Jenna returned to replace the extra-large nightdress for a smaller one, she wrapped it carefully in tissue paper. Sheila said in a muted voice, "Oh, by the way, I meant to thank you for what you did back there, with the security guard. It was very kind of you to come to my defence. I truly appreciate it." Jenna looked up at Sheila Morris and gave her a bright, sunny smile. "No problem, ma'am," she said politely, handing Sheila the package containing the red nightdress. "Ma'am," she said in a low voice, looking carefully around herself to check that no one was in hearing distance. But the security guard, Sid, had long gone, and was probably sulking in a corner like a cat that had allowed the mouse he'd been chasing to get away. "Word of advice, ma'am. Don't do something like this again. It's really not worth it. You really don't want to end up with a criminal conviction. My sister Erica used to shoplift relentlessly. She got a buzz from stealing stuff that she didn't even want, just for the hell of it. I rather suspect you're the same, ma'am, in that regard. You don't look like the kind of person who actually needs to shoplift. Let's just say it was the biggest mistake on my sister's part, getting addicted to shoplifting. Please don't make the mistake she did. My sister's now got a criminal record. She struggles to get employment, even though I absolutely know she'd never ever steal again. She's a highly skilled chartered accountant, you know. She learnt some hard lessons along the way." Jenna looked at Sheila with a piteous look on her face that made Sheila want to inwardly squirm, for she loathed anyone pitying her. "Think about what I said, ma'am," said Jenna kindly. Sheila nodded, her face reddening, the heat rising up in her skin. She didn't know how to respond to Jenna, but now she perfectly understood why Jenna had come to her immediate defence. It was obvious that her sister Erica had suffered from the same stealing addiction that had governed her entire life as it had done Sheila's. Jenna had seen her sister in her, which was why she'd stuck out her neck on her account and come to her immediate rescue. Sheila Morris could not say a single word. Her tongue was tied and was stuck to the roof of her mouth, but she nodded again as she thanked Jenna and soberly marched out of the store with her head held high, after, of course, dropping the nightdress off at the manager. "It's for Jenna. She's a good friend of mine. She works in lingerie. You know the one." "Yes, I do, ma'am." "Well, it's a nightdress. I bought it for her because I know she's very partial to this red nightdress, and she's always been very good to me." "It's very kind of you, ma'am," said the manager. "Jenna will be most thrilled." Sheila Morris left the store abruptly, looking as dignified as she possibly could. It was important to look like you were confident and assertive, even if you felt as if the world had dealt you a hefty blow. When Sheila finally sank into the leather seats of her Land Rover, her whole body collapsed, and her straight back almost crumpled on the seat, as if she'd become like a folding chair. Sheila Morris began to slap her steering wheel furiously, as if it was her steering wheel that had predisposed her to being caught shoplifting, when in reality the fortuitous events in the store had all but been her fault. If she didn't steal, she wouldn't get herself into these pickles. But then again, that was why she stole in the first place, for getting away with something that you shouldn't do was the most deliriously euphoric feeling in the entire world for Sheila. But getting caught was a different story altogether. It was like a cold slap in the face, and a stark reminder to Sheila that she wasn't as consummately accomplished at stealing as she actually thought she was. "You stupid idiot!" she reprimanded herself severely, almost as if she was scolding a little child for misbehaving rather badly. "You stupid idiot! You shouldn't have got bloody caught! You're better than that! What the hell is wrong with you, Sheila Morris?" Indeed, Sheila had hit the steering wheel so hard that her hands ached from the impromptu attack, and the next morning she would find her hand covered in black bruises. Sheila reluctantly started up the engine of her Land Rover, which purred happily like a contented cat, despite the fact that the steering wheel had undergone some rather rough treatment on her account. She drove away from the department store, but she felt as flat as a pancake that had been placed on a piping hot griddle without any raising agent, for on this morning her normal effervescent bubbliness had fizzled away, as if it had never existed at all. She was on her way to pick up her daughter Lily from her friend's house. The Jenkins lived at the enviable, large, prepossessing white Georgian house at the bottom of their street, framed like all the other houses on the right-hand side of their street by a heavily wooded area, comprised of tall lofty trees, and a plethora of exciting hiking trails, some for the ambitiously inclined. The Jenkins house was the envy of everyone in the street, including Sheila Morris herself, who'd have happily swapped houses in an instant, if given the chance, but that would never ever happen, for the Jenkins loved and were very devoted to their Georgian house, and would never consider selling the place, no matter how generous the offer from a potential buyer. Let's just say if you could shoplift houses and tuck them away in your pockets as easily as a bottle of perfume from the store, Sheila Morris would have done that a long time ago. Sheila Morris envied the Jenkins Georgian house, even though her stunning, rather opulent-looking modern bungalow was extremely sophisticated in every single sense of the word. It boasted the most cutting-edge modern conveniences that would be the envy of many, like swish velvety curtains that at a press of a button would draw themselves, remote-controlled lighting, and a Bang & Olufsen musical centre that operated in every single room in the house at a flick of a switch. By all accounts, the Morrises' bungalow had cost a fortune to build, which they had done with no expense spared. The bungalow possessed a modern, understated elegance, but it sadly lacked the pomp and ceremony of the Jenkins Georgian home, that gave off a stately ambience so typical of the grandiose, regal-looking houses of that time, and made you believe that whoever lived in that imposing, rather courtly house had to be related to royalty. Still, you couldn't have everything, could you? Sheila Morris secretly engaged in personal fantasies of bulldozing her current bungalow and building a replica house exactly the same as the Jenkins Georgian home. But then she reasoned with herself rather wisely that it would never ever be the same. You can certainly make a house appear to look historic by building an exact copy of houses of that time. But it's like buying an imitation handbag and not the original handbag, which is not the same thing. For a house's history is part of its charm and character, and that you cannot recreate with just bricks and mortar. Since the Jenkins lived incredibly close to the Morrises, Sheila's 11-year-old daughter Lily could easily walk home, but Sheila had texted her daughter to say that she was on her way back from the department store and would pick her up in a few minutes, and so there was no need for her to walk home. The Jenkins and the Morrises had known each other for many years, especially as they lived on the same street. The families had become close friends, and Sheila was particularly close to Amber Jenkins, who was the mother of Lily's best friend Brittany. The family frequently entertained each other at barbecues and dinner parties during the year, and once a week Sheila and Amber Jenkins would meet up in town for their weekly luncheon together, which was always a fun affair, for they would experiment with different cuisines, from Italian to Thai, as both women had a great appreciation for fine food. They would naturally talk about anything and nothing, and were all the more close because both women had girls of a similar age that went to the same prestigious private school and were in the same class together. Amber Jenkins also had a 13-year-old son, who was a couple of years older than his sister, and Amber Jenkins seemed to be spending her life ferrying her son around to all sorts of extracurricular activities, from judo to taekwondo, and yet she enjoyed playing the part of a dotingly dutiful parent, it would seem. Soon Sheila was driving down their familiar, beautiful tree-lined street, where the trees met each other in an arch, like a long line of dignified soldiers linking arms together. It meant that the soft summer sunlight would sneakily peek through the glossy, leafy green foliage and allow ethereal slivers to twinkle through the trees and leave pretty prisms of light, casting their shadows across the road. There were clusters of leaves on both sides of the road that had been left over from the previous fall and looked like a large sweeping pillow of golden confetti. Sheila Morris drove straight down the road, passing her own bungalow on the right-hand side of the street, to get to the Jenkins property at the bottom of the road. She quickly put the radio on to drown out the annoying voice in her head that kept telling her what a klutz she'd been in the department store. If it wasn't for the sweet sales assistant, Jenna, Sheila knew she could potentially be in the police station by now, having her fingerprints taken, and the thought made her shudder with horror. Sheila took a swift right-hand turn and glided down a red brick driveway, and then reached the Jenkins property, but all the while her hands clasped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles were showing rather obtrusively. The tension in her shoulders made her whole body feel as stiff and as uncompliant as a shop mannequin. Sheila sighed as she parked her Land Rover outside the Jenkins front door. She began to blow the horn more impertinently than usual, as her patience after the unforeseen, rather humiliating events of the morning had inspired her mood to become somewhat cranky and a little irritated. Very often Mrs. Jenkins would pick up both girls from school and bring them back to her house, so it was common for Brittany and Lily to spend lots of time together. Sheila Morris was still cursing under her breath for her complete stupidity at getting caught. She prided herself on being a shrewdly cunning thief that could steal things with a wily slip of her hand, and over the years she was getting better and better at refining her Machiavellian skills at stealing. But today she'd been seen by the security guard, and possibly even the sales assistant herself, and so Sheila Morris felt like she'd badly failed herself. Sheila Morris looked up from her driver's side seat to see her daughter Lily charging towards her, with her school satchel flung casually over her shoulders. Lily Morris had slight, narrow shoulders and bony, awkward knees that protruded from beneath her blue and white gingham school dress. Her chestnut-brown hair was swept away from her face in a proud but messy ponytail, and was tied up with a blue ribbon, for if your hair was long at the school, it was mandatory that it was tied up in ribbon. Lily's brown eyes, as usual, always looked mischievous, as if she was up to no good. Brittany Jenkins was standing in the arched, very glamorous doorway of her Georgian home, waving her hand at both Sheila and Lily. Sheila Morris waved back at Brittany to be polite, but her daughter Lily wilfully ignored her best friend, which was a tad unusual. Lily was out of breath when she excitedly sank into the passenger-side seat next to her mother. Sheila Morris finally honked her horn to bid farewell to Brittany, and then the front door of the Jenkins house closed behind itself. "So how was your day at school, love?" Sheila Morris asked her daughter. "Oh, you know," said Lily, "every day at school is exactly the same. But it was cool spending time with Brittany after school. She's going to New York next week, you know. Well, not next week, the week after next. Lucky fish! I wish I was going to New York. She's even getting a couple of days off from the headmistress, a Thursday and a Friday, would you believe? She's been given special permission. You know what Mrs. Patchett is like. She never gives time off to anyone. But Brittany sashays into her office this morning to see Mrs. Patchett, and she gets time off school, 2 days to be precise. A Thursday and a Friday, as I keep saying. How fair is that? Some people get all the luck. I don't think if I went to see Mrs. Patchett, she'd give me a couple of days off school. But I think she really likes Brittany. But then everybody does, don't they? She only has to smile at the teachers and they give in to her. It's one rule for her and another one for us. It makes me sick to my stomach, it really does. Brittany is your best friend, love. The way you're talking, you sound incredibly jealous about her going to New York for a couple of days. I'm quite sure Mrs. Patchett gave her those days off for very good reason. Well, if you must know, it's her grandfather's 80th birthday. He's having it on a Friday night. It's going to be a special event, with fireworks and stuff. Sounds absolutely lovely. Well, love, I can see why Brittany has been given a couple of days off school if that's the case. It's not every day that your grandfather turns 80, is it? Lily pulled a contorted face. You should have seen Brittany, Mum. She was so full of herself, so inflated her ego was. She was showing me the fancy dress she was going to wear to the party. She had it specially made for her by her mother's fashion designer. She was parading it around the house to show off to me. I think she thought she was a beautiful princess. Well, I never told her she looked pretty. I never said a single word. Sweetheart, I don't like the way you're talking about your best friend with such obvious contempt. It's not pretty, said Sheila Morris, realizing her daughter was displaying the very unattractive symptoms of jealousy, just because her best friend was going to New York. This was a side of her daughter Sheila Morris had not yet seen, and she didn't like it one single bit. Anyway, I'm the one that got the last laugh, said Lily, grabbing her satchel and retrieving what looked like some navy velvety blue material from inside her bag. She was wearing a smug, self-satisfied look on her face, I don't think Brittany is going to look like a princess any more, Mum. Sheila glanced in horror as she realised that her daughter was folding out a beautiful velvety blue dress on her lap. This is her dress! I took it from her bedroom. Hanging up in the closet it was, when she wasn't looking. So she's not going to be able to wear it to her grandfather's party after all. Serves her right, said Lily, making a face. She was showing off so much. She deserves everything she gets. You what? Said Sheila Morris, jerking the steering wheel. You took your best friend's dress from her closet. That was especially made for her. Why would you do such a thing, love? It will be so obvious to her that you took it. I didn't raise you to become a thief, and the Jenkins aren't stupid, you know. If the dress is gone, they'll connect the dots to you. You couldn't be more obvious, love, if you tried. At this, Lily cocked her face. That's rich coming from you, Mum, when you've been stealing for years and years. Don't look so surprised. Yes, I know all about it. I know why you send me off to go and get an ice cream at the shops, just so that I'm out of your way. But I'm not stupid, you know. I've seen you clandestinely slipping things into your purse, like that ugly vase you got, and then hide them in the closet in the playroom. You've taken tons of stuff over the years, so don't you dare lecture me about stealing, because you do it all the time. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, as Daddy always says. Sheila was now completely stumped. She didn't know how to react to Lily's indignant outburst. How could she possibly condemn her daughter for doing something that she frequently did herself? She was supposed to lead by example, by being a principled role model for her daughter, and not encouraging her to become a thief like she was. But she had thought she'd kept her shoplifting practices cloak and dagger. The last thing she'd ever expected was for Lily to know about her shoplifting exploits. It seemed against all the odds that her daughter Lily not only knew where she stashed away her stolen goods after she had taken them, but had actually physically witnessed her in the act of stealing stuff from a department store, stuff that was not hers. Sheila Morris was suddenly convicted with a surge of overwhelming guilt. This was all her fault. She had caused this mess. What kind of an example had she set for her daughter? If Lily had witnessed her stealing, how could she possibly reprimand her for doing the very same thing? Sheila knew she needed to set down some boundaries for her daughter. She didn't want Lily to become like her. This would be no way for her child to live. Sheila was inwardly cursing herself for all the years she had stolen from people and from department stores, and the euphoric pleasure it had obviously brought her. But now she felt personally chastised and convicted, for now things were very, very different indeed, for she was teaching her daughter some of her very bad habits that could potentially ruin her daughter's life and sabotage her future. She needed to nip this in the bud right now. She couldn't allow her daughter to become like her under any circumstances. She'd been such a fool, she told herself, for if you did something wrong, it tends to come back to bite you in ways you never imagined possible. Look, sweetheart, said Sheila, I don't like what I do. It's wrong, and I'm very ashamed that you personally witnessed me shoplifting. I really am. Then why do you do it, Mum? Asked Lily, staring at her mother with wide, questioning eyes. Why would you do something you don't like, that you believe is wrong? It doesn't make sense to me. That's a very good question, sweetheart. I don't know the answer to it, said Sheila. I just know it gives me a thrill when I take things that don't belong to me. But I've got to stop. If your father knew about what I do, well, there is no telling how he would react. I dread to think about it. He'd be so ashamed of me, and rightly so. You think he'd divorce you, don't you? Said Lily. Is that what you're worried about, Mum? Don't be silly. Dad would never, ever leave you. He loves you too much. Besides, you know what Dad's like. He takes his marriage vows extremely seriously. He's an old stick in the mud. He does everything by the book and has absolutely no sense of humour whatsoever. But you're different, Mum. You live on the edge, and it's very exciting. I want to be exactly like you. At her daughter's horrifying words that pierced through Sheila's skin like a sharp injectable, Sheila suddenly stopped her car in the middle of the road so that it stalled for a brief moment, as if even her car had taken offence to her daughter's words. This was turning out to be a rather unfortunate day. At first Sheila had been caught shoplifting, well, very nearly, and now her daughter had stolen her best friend's dress, claiming she wanted to become a thief like her mother, because living on the edge was oh so exciting. Sheila's heart began to pound in her chest rather violently. She wondered how best to rein in her daughter's wild ideas that had been brought on by her unbridled influences. Sheila pulled her Land Rover to one side of the road, into a park position. Her face was now dappled with grave concern, for the last thing she wanted for her daughter was to become like her, and get her kicks from stealing things that did not belong to her, as this was no way for her daughter to live a productive life. So what kind of an influence had she been on her daughter, she wondered. "Mum, we're nearly home. Why are you stopping your car in the middle of the street like this?" her daughter said, rolling her eyes in exasperation. "Because, love, I need to talk to you. And I need to talk to you right now. It is so important we have a discussion about this. You taking your best friend's dress is extremely unsettling for me. Very unsettling indeed. I can't believe you did such a terrible thing. You have got to return Brittany's dress back to her. You do realize that, I hope. I don't know what possessed you to do such a foolish thing." "But why are you upset with me, Mum? I'm only doing what you do. And besides, I felt really good taking Brittany's dress from her. It'll wipe the smug smile off her face when she's realised it's gone. So she won't look like such a princess for her grandfather's 80th birthday after all. And I'm glad about that. She deserves everything she gets. She's so full of herself. You can't talk about your best friend with such disdain, love, as if you want to punish her for being happy about a pretty dress that she'll be wearing to her grandfather's party. It's really disgusting to be so jealous, love. It really does not become you in any way. And it's got to stop. It's not good, love. And the last thing I want is for you to become like me. Shoplifting is wrong in every sense of the word. It's appalling to take things that do not belong to you. Even the Bible tells us we should not steal. It's a criminal offence, and if you get caught, you could end up with a criminal conviction. And I don't want that for you, love, under any circumstances, because it would only jeopardize your career in the future. No one ever wants to hire someone with a criminal record. So don't you dare start following my abysmal lead and stealing things from people or stores. I have a problem, love, and I recognize that. I intend to get help for it because I'm influencing you with my bad habits. So I've also got to stop this. But you never ever get caught, Mum. I can be like you, can't I? I can become skilled at stealing stuff without ever being seen. We could do it together as a team, Mum. Help each other out. It would be great fun. I hope you're joking, love, because you and I are not going to start stealing together as a team. In fact, from this day forward, I intend to stop stealing for good and put that part of my life strictly behind me. Believe me, love, I very nearly, on more than one occasion, have been caught. I'm lucky that up to now I've never been charged. But if I continue down this precarious path, I'll end up with a criminal record, and I don't want that for you. If you know the adage, when you play with fire you get burnt, well, let me tell you something for nothing, love. That's absolutely true. Never was a truer word ever spoken. I'm very concerned about what you've done. For goodness sake, Lily, Brittany is your best friend. You need to take that beautiful dress of hers right back to her, and somehow put it somewhere where she might find it and think that she misplaced it in some way. You don't want her to think you stole it from her. You're going to discreetly have to give it back to her. You say she tried her dress on in front of you to show you what she was going to wear for her grandfather's 80th birthday party. You didn't even bother to tell her how pretty she looked, because it was just too much for you to do that. When she goes back to her closet and sees her dress is gone, she will know, Lily, that you took it. She'll connect the dots. She's not stupid. Imagine for a moment, Lily, how discouraged, disappointed and betrayed Brittany will feel.
if she believes you've done this to her. It could jeopardize your friendship for good. She'll never be able to trust you again. Surely you don't want that."
"No, she won't think I stole it, Mum. The Jenkins family have a cleaner. She comes in every day. She'll think the cleaner stole it from her. I know she will. She won't believe I did it."
Sheila Morris sighed with frustration. "Are you crazy, love? Do you really want to get the poor woman the Jenkins hired to clean their house to be sacked on your account? Are you absolutely insane? That would be a cruel, extremely malicious thing for you to do. And if that doesn't prick your conscience, I despair with you, because I don't know what will. The way I see it, you have two choices. Either you own up to Brittany and tell her you took her dress in a moment of unbridled jealousy, or you return it to her very discreetly, so she thinks she somehow managed to misplace it. But we need to get it back to her as soon as we possibly can, in order to right this wrong."
"But I don't want to give her dress back to her," Lily protested indignantly. "You don't understand, Mum, what she's like. She's so full of herself, especially now. She couldn't stop smugly going on about how I will be at school, while she's having fun in New York. She's going to go to her grandfather's party at the Waldorf Astoria, where it's being hosted. Her family's going to stay at a fancy hotel in New York, and they're going to visit the theatre there, and some fancy eating places as well. It's not fair."
"Good God, love, listen to yourself," said Sheila Morris, looking horrified. "Look at you, Lily. You are green at the gills. I've never seen anything like it. I underestimated how badly jealous you are of Brittany, and that is absolutely ridiculous."
"I'm not jealous," said Lily, pulling a face.
"Yes, you are, love, and it's ugly. You should want good things for your best friend. You're behaving like someone who's impoverished and doesn't have a good life. We're a very wealthy family, love. You've never ever wanted for anything. I could take you to New York tomorrow or any other time you like. And as for the dress that you've stolen from Brittany, I can get you a much better one than that, made up especially for you. And you can wear it on a special occasion. You have absolutely no excuse to be jealous. You should be absolutely ashamed of yourself."
Lily Morris sulked the rest of the way home, although it wasn't very far to go. Her mother started up the engine and drove down the road back to their bungalow, for it would seem her mother's salient words had hit a raw nerve for Lily. She suddenly knew that stealing her best friend's dress was wrong and extremely vulgar, in every sense of the word. What if her mother was absolutely right, and her act of extreme selfishness, brought on by a touch of the green-eyed monster, seriously severed her relationship with Brittany for good? What if Brittany refused to speak to her ever again, because of a stupid dress? What if a fancy piece of material drove a wedge between their friendship? Suddenly Lily Morris was hit with the full horrifying ramifications of what she'd actually done. What a complete idiot she'd been to take Brittany's special dress, which clearly meant so much to her best friend. But when Lily had seen Brittany modelling the dress that she was going to wear to her grandfather's party, held at the Waldorf Astoria, she had been overcome with a burning desire to take the dress away from her, because then it might wipe the self-satisfied smug smile off her friend's face, who thought at that moment that she was the bee's knees, simply because Mrs. Patchett, the headmistress, had agreed to give her a couple of days off school. Lily Morris was now realizing in hindsight, as her mother's words started to sink in, that maybe stealing wasn't actually all it was cracked up to be. Her mother was right. Taking things came at a large price and a huge cost. Although she'd seen her mother shoplifting many times before, she realized with a heavy heart losing Brittany's friendship was a price that she was not willing to pay. Brittany was her very best friend. The two of them were closer than sisters. Lily had allowed her extreme jealousy to overcrowd her common sense. What on earth had she done? She was clandestinely wishing she could backtrack in the last hour of her life, so that she could have resisted the temptation of stuffing Lily's party dress into her school satchel. Now the question was, should she come clean to Brittany and tell her the truth, that she'd been seething with jealousy about the fact that she'd been granted a couple of days off school by the headmistress, Mrs. Patchett, who wasn't exactly known for giving people preferential treatment of any kind, and yet she had unhesitantly given Brittany time off,
which rarely had served to rub Lily up the wrong way, for she felt it was all so desperately unfair, as if Mrs. Patchett was biased and partisan towards Brittany over and above the rest of the pupils at school. It would be so humiliating to reveal to Brittany the extent of her resentfulness and spite. If she could get the dress back to Lily without her knowing about it, that would be a much better solution. But the question was, how did she go about doing that? Brittany Jenkins. Brittany Jenkins was bubbling over with excited enthusiasm about her trip to New York in a couple of weeks' time. She'd been to New York a couple of times before, but this trip would be extra special, for her grandfather was having his 80th birthday that was going to be celebrated at the Waldorf Astoria, which was a grandiose venue, to say the very least. Brittany knew what her brand new velvety blue dress would make her look like. She'd feel like a princess wearing it. Things had gone better for her than she'd ever imagined possible, almost as if all the planets had been perfectly aligned, like the planet Jupiter, for example, that is always making an appearance when good fortune breaks out in your lives. Perhaps Jupiter was in her star chart this month, she wondered. Her mother believed in such things. Her mother was very passionate about astrology. It had been a miracle that her headmistress, Mrs. Patchett, had said that of course she should take time off school to celebrate her grandfather's 80th birthday, which was a milestone and a very important celebration that should not be missed under any circumstances, and hearing that had been music to Brittany's ears. Mrs. Patchett was a scrupulously severe, very strict headmistress in every sense of the word, and in Brittany's young life she'd never met anyone as fearsome or as intimidating as her, for she was one of those people that commanded the greatest of respect, and no one dared mess her around. Pupils at school were terrified of taking a trip to the headmistress's office for bad behaviour, as Mrs. Patchett would tolerate no nonsense, and leave them quaking in their boots, for her sobering words of condemnation and rebuke could make anybody feel so small that they'd lightly wish the ground would swallow them whole. Mrs. Patchett, known by some of the pupils as the Dragon, had zero tolerance towards parents who allowed their children to take time off school, unless of course they were genuinely sick, and if that were the case she demanded a doctor's certificate by way of proof, as a mother's word was not reliable enough. Yet when Brittany had gone to speak to Mrs. Patchett, to ask her about her grandfather's birthday party, Mrs. Patchett hadn't hesitated in telling her that of course she could go, and for Mrs. Patchett to be so reasonably accommodating was practically unheard of. Ostensibly both pupils and teachers would always describe her as formidable at the best of times, but Brittany had known that even intimidating people, such as Mrs. Patchett, were still human underneath the veneer they presented to the world. But even so, she had been unduly surprised by how warm-hearted, mellow, and completely understanding Mrs. Patchett had been towards her. Indeed, Brittany's little heart had been pounding a dime to a dozen when she had very reluctantly and apprehensively knocked on the headmistress's door. At the time she had half a mind to run away as fast as she could, when she heard Mrs. Patchett's voice responding to her knock. "I can't do this," she told herself, feeling the adrenaline coursing through her veins into a flight and fight response, which gave her the overwhelming tugging desire to run. But somehow she held herself together by taking in some very deep breaths and remaining resolutely still. "Come in," Mrs. Patchett had called. Brittany's legs wobbled beneath her as she slowly but surely opened the door to enter Mrs. Patchett's office. She was terrified, so much so that she was practically trembling in her shoes. She felt rather like an endangered rabbit that had entered a lion's enclosure, conspicuous and extremely vulnerable. She quickly ran a hand on her ponytail to try and straighten it, and to make sure that her blue ribbon was still firmly in place. It would be inconceivable to enter the headmistress's office without wearing a blue ribbon in your hair, especially if it was long, as Mrs. Patchett took presentation extremely seriously, and would not abide slapdash sloppiness of any kind, especially in a pupil's deportment. Mrs. Patchett beckoned for her to take a seat. Brittany had been extremely glad to sit on the chair, even though she sat up with her back as straight as a pencil, and her fingers clasped tightly together into two clammy fists, for her nerves were getting the better of her, and she could feel a prickle of sweat developing on the back of her neck, as her body became very hot and flustered. She hadn't wanted Mrs. Patchett to see how terrified she was. She had told herself again and again that Mrs. Patchett was not going to eat her alive, was nothing to be feared. Even her mother had told her to imagine Mrs. Patchett at her desk naked, and then she wouldn't seem so threatening. "If you do that, she'll seem much more human," she had told her daughter. But try as she might, Brittany couldn't imagine Mrs. Patchett naked. The vision was impossible to entertain in her mind, because Mrs. Patchett was so prim and proper. She didn't seem like a regular human being. What if Mrs. Patchett refused her request, she wondered, her skin burning so much that she was certain she had gone bright red. "Ah, Brittany Jenkins, it's you. So what do I owe this pleasure?" said Mrs. Patchett. A smile was now twitching on the corners of her lips. Brittany had never seen Mrs. Patchett smile before, so she was taken completely off guard. Normally the stern, draconian headmistress looked almost boot-faced and rather unapproachable, but the smile appeared to have lit up her eyes. Maybe she was human after all, Brittany thought to herself, feeling a small rush of relief, fanning her trepidation, like a cool current of fresh air. "I understand you have a private matter that you want to discuss with me, of a personal nature. So I'm curious to learn what it is," said Mrs. Patchett, her brown eyes dappled with flecks of green that grew round behind the tortoise-shell spectacles that she was wearing. Lily felt very conspicuous, as if she was a goldfish in a round glass bowl, being observed very intrusively by a pair of shrewd eyes. For a moment the words refused to come out of her mouth. She opened and closed her mouth, but nothing appeared to come out. "Speak up, young lady," said Mrs. Patchett. "I may look like the devil incarnate, but I assure you I'm not going to bite. Tell me what it is you've come to see me about, young lady." Brittany stumbled awkwardly on her words, but finally they did manage to come out. My mother told me to come and see you about this important matter," she stammered. "My grandfather, you see, he's turning 80 years old, in 2 weeks' time to be exact." "Your grandfather is turning 80 years old," said Mrs. Patchett, raising one of her arched manicure's brows. "Well, that's an impressive milestone to accomplish, isn't it? Well done to him, I say. But why does this concern me, Brittany dear?" "It's just Mrs. Patchett. My grandfather, you see, he lives in New York. His birthday's on Friday evening. It's been held at the Waldorf Astoria. He's invited lots of people, including me, my brother, my mother and father." "Well, of course he'd invite you. You're close family, are you not? How perfectly lovely. And what a delightful venue to host a party at," said Mrs. Patchett. "Go on. What is it you want to ask me, Brittany? Be pacific, will you?" "Well, I was wondering, Mrs. Patchett, if I could take both Thursday and Friday off school so that we can fly to New York on Wednesday evening to prepare for my grandfather's birthday. We'd like to be there ahead of time if that's possible, 'cause there's quite a lot to do." "But of course you can take a couple of days off, Brittany. And thank you for asking me this in person, rather than getting your parents to call on your behalf. I do hate it when pupils get their parents to do their dirty work for them. Anyone would think I had a nasty bite." Brittany couldn't believe how nice Mrs. Patchett was being towards her. But when she shared her good news to her best friend Lily Morris, and told her how terrified she'd been to go and see the headmistress in person, how she'd been so affrighted she'd nearly lost her nerve and run away, she recounted how Mrs. Patchett had agreed to her request at once. Lily did not seem pleased to hear how well things had turned out for Brittany. On the contrary, she seemed bitter and resentful, abruptly insinuating rather rudely, in not so many words, that she believed Brittany was unfairly favoured by Mrs. Patchett, and by all the other teachers at school as well, who would never refuse her any request, as all the teachers liked her, and she could do no wrong as far as they were concerned. "Don't be silly, Lily. I don't know where you got that crazy idea from. I'm sure if you'd asked Mrs. Patchett for a couple of days off school to go to your own grandfather's 80th birthday, she'd have happily agreed to give you the time off like she did for me. People think Mrs. Patchett is always going to refuse them any request. But I think the dragon has a heart after all." Lily pulled a face. "I don't think that's true," she said. "Mrs. Patchett is a dragon. She breathes out fire, I'm telling you. She's obnoxious in every sense of the word, especially to the pupils. But you, for some reason, have her eating out of your hand, like all the other teachers do. And I'm sorry, but it's not right. It's not remotely fair. It stinks. Lily, what you say is not true, Brittany had insisted. You have no idea how terrified I was to ask Mrs. Patchett for the time off. I was shaking in my boots, let me tell you. I thought she was going to say to me that I should take a flight to New York after school on Friday and then go to the party from there, without taking any time off school. And she could have said that, but she didn't. I think her bark is a lot worse than her bite, I really do. And people have automatically assumed her to be a lot more formidable than she actually is. Mrs. Patchett may not breathe out fire to you, Lily had protested, but if I asked her for the same favour, she'd have refused me. I know she would. Brittany had been extremely discouraged to hear Lily talk about her, as if she could click her fingers like magic, and the teachers would invariably come running, agreeing to her every request, because none of that was true. Nevertheless, there was no point in arguing with Lily on this one. Her best friend doggedly seemed to be very aggrieved, and had drifted into a big sulk. Brittany decided that she needed to change the subject quickly. She could see Lily was not remotely happy, and was looking decidedly sorry for herself, as if in some way Lily's good news had served to upset her greatly. Brittany thought she'd cheer Lily up by showing her her beautiful velvety blue dress that she would be wearing for her grandfather's party. Surely that would lift her spirits. Brittany asked Lily to close her eyes, and then she'd put on the dress to model for her best friend. She had done some elegant twirls for Lily, to show her how beautiful the dress was, but Lily's stinking mood became even more volatile. She seemed to look increasingly disgruntled. Brittany was certain she had observed a flicker of jealousy wash over Lily's face, which she couldn't understand. She'd never seen Lily look so obviously peeved before. She really was in a fine mood that day. Why would Lily Morris, who could have anything she wanted in the entire world, as both of her parents were stinky rich and extremely affluent, be jealous of the likes of her? I'm imagining it, she told herself fiercely. Lily and I are the very best of friends. She'd only want the best for me, I know she would. Of course she's happy for me that I'm going to New York. It had been a relief, though, to hear the sound of Mrs. Morris's horn blowing outside the Georgian house, as Lily, for the first time in a long time, was happy to see the back of her best friend. As after she'd told Lily about her trip to New York and shown her her beautiful dress that she intended to wear, Lily Morrison had shut down. She hadn't even told Brittany that she looked nice and that her dress was pretty. Instead, she'd stared blankly at the dress and said, "So you're wearing that, are you?" And she said it in such a way that it made Brittany think she didn't even like her dress, and her scathing indifference had been very hurtful indeed. Brittany knew her best friend was feeling aggrieved, because she thought the headmistress, Mrs. Patchett, favoured her above other pupils, when nothing could be further from the truth. Lily was most sure if the boot were on the other foot, and Lily needed to take a couple of days off school to go to New York for her own grandfather's 80th birthday, then Mrs. Patchett would likewise have obliged her request and happily given her the time off. So why was Lily being obnoxiously unreasonable and so incredibly objectionable? Yes, it was true that the school was very strict, with dozens of rules, especially about time taken off for pupils, but there were always exceptions to those rules. It would have been nice if Lily Morris could have been happy for her, but it was obvious she was inwardly furiously venting about what she considered to be favouritism on the headmistress's part. She was like a dog with a bone, who would not let her grievances go. Brittany had watched Lily Morris from her front door, charging off towards her mother's Land Rover, when she heard the horn blowing. It was almost as if Lily was eager to leave the house, as if she couldn't get away from Brittany fast enough, but the feeling was mutual. She had never behaved in this incongruous way before. Usually she was reluctant to leave Brittany's house, but now she wanted to create as much distance between the two of them as possible, and the wider the distance the better. Brittany had politely stood in the doorway and waved goodbye to Mrs. Morris, and Lily had flung herself into the passenger-side seat next to her mother, and not even given her a second glance, not even acknowledged her, or so much as waved at her. What was wrong with Lily? Why was she so incredibly embittered
about Brittany going to New York. Why couldn't she be happy for her? Brittany returned to her bedroom, feeling slightly despondent and rather flat, rather like a bottle of fizz that has lost its sparkle. She loved spending time with Lily Morris, who always made her laugh, for they spent many fun-filled times together, and were usually inseparable. But on this occasion the afternoon had been riddled with tension, and Brittany had never experienced that before, almost as if an awkwardness had permeated their friendship. She decided she'd take another peek at the dress she was going to wear for her grandfather's 80th birthday. It was so gorgeous, and seeing the dreamy, velvety material of the dress would physically lift her spirits and put her in a decidedly good mood, and she needed that lift right now. She couldn't help imagine what people might say about her magnificent dress at the party, for she knew she'd never owned a dress that was more beautiful. Lily sighed rather sadly as she opened her closet up, expecting to see the beautiful dress she intended to wear for her grandfather's 80th birthday bash hanging on a hanger proudly. But when she opened the closet, the dress was all but gone. Where was it? She began to panic. For a moment she felt as if she was completely losing her mind.
But I know I put my dress back in the closet just over there, in its usual spot. I modelled it for Lily, and then I put it back. But where has it got to? But dresses don't grow legs and go walkabout, do they?
In a mad, somewhat frenzied panic, Brittany began to abruptly pull out all the neatly folded clothes out of her closet, throwing shoes and dresses indiscriminately over her bed. Her party dress had to be somewhere, she thought. Where had it got to?
"What on earth is going on here?"
said Amber Jenkins, entering her daughter's bedroom, only to see that Brittany's normally pristine, neat bedroom looked like it'd been hit by a raging tornado, for dresses and clothes were messily scattered around the place in large puddles. Mrs. Jenkins had never known the room to look this dishevelled before, but her daughter appeared to be frantically searching through her stuff, as if looking for something with a desperate urgency, like someone might look for an EpiPen if they've had an allergic, life-threatening reaction to something. She could see her daughter appeared to be in quite a state. What was going on with her, she wondered. Brittany was so caught up in her desperate search to find her missing dress that she barely noticed her mother standing there in the doorway, watching her, wearing on her pale face an expression of complete confoundment. Amber Jenkins repeated herself, raising her voice so her daughter might hear her.
"What on earth is going on in here, Brittany? You look as if you've turned your entire bedroom into a jumble sale. The place is a decided mess. I've never seen anything like it. This is most unlike you. You're normally so tidy and so very ordered. What's going on with you, sweetheart?"
Brittany looked up at her mother, her face reddening.
"Mum, I've lost the dress I'm going to wear to Grandpa's birthday party. I put it on a hanger in my closet, and now it's gone. It's vanished." "Of course it's not vanished, love. It must be somewhere around here. But frankly, I'm not surprised you can't find it. This bedroom of yours looks like a bomb has hit it. But I'm most sure when you put your things tidily away in your closet that you will find it. It's got to be there somewhere. You've probably forgotten where you put it."
"What's going on in here?" asked Brittany's brother George. He was 2 years older than his sister. George's jaw dropped right open as he entered Brittany's bedroom. Like his mother, he was so used to his sister being fastidiously tidy at all times, so much so, in fact, that he often teased her about her need for things to be just so. So to see Brittany's bedroom in such disarray was nothing short of bewildering for him. Mrs. Amber Jenkins shook her head.
"Your sister's thrown a bit of a wobbly, dear. She thinks she's lost the dress that she's going to wear to your grandfather's birthday party in a couple of weeks' time. But I'm sure it's there. Is it any wonder she can't find it in this mess? Oh, goodness gracious me, is that the time?" she said, glancing down at her watch. "I better get those potatoes peeled. They're not going to peel themselves, are they?"
And with that she exited the room. George remained in the doorway. He watched his sister carefully folding up her clothes to put back neatly in her closet. She seemed caught up in her own little bubble, but he could see the disquieted expression on his sister's face, and knew very well she was visibly upset about something. And he hated seeing her like this, for he was always protective towards his younger sister.
"Mum's right, sis. Don't look so sad. Your dress must be there somewhere. When did you last see it in your closet? Try and remember." Brittany looked up at her brother and frowned. "Well, I was showing my dress to Lily. I modelled it for her. But I don't even know why I bothered to do that. She didn't even say my dress was pretty. I then put it away in the closet, and I hung it on a hanger. And now it's gone." "You don't think," said George, looking a little awkward. "I don't think what?" "Well, that Lily could have taken your dress. Because it's unlike you to not know where you put it. You're never absent-minded, are you?" "But she wouldn't steal my dress, George. We're the best of friends. Why would she do an ugly thing like that?" Maybe because she's jealous." "No," said Brittany, shaking her head furiously. "Brittany may be many things, but she's not a thief." "I don't know," said George. "Don't get me wrong. I like Lily, but she's a bit self-entitled, isn't she? And sometimes I get the impression she's quite jealous of you." "That's crazy. Why would she be jealous of me?" "Well, you're better at sports than she is for a start. You get better grades at school, and you're much prettier than her. I guess there's quite a bit of jealousy about that with her. Well, at least I think there is. When people are jealous, they do mean things to the person that has made them feel that way." "You mean you think Lily would take my dress just to spite me? Are you crazy? Why would she do a thing like that?" "I do think she'd take your dress to spite you," said George. "I know you think the stars grow out of her backside, but I think Lily is capable of being spiteful, if needs must. I'm sure of it, in fact. Well, I will admit, she wasn't happy about me going to Grandpa's birthday party in New York. She told me Mrs. Patchett, our headmistress, favoured me because she'd given me a couple of days off. She went into quite a sulk about it, actually. Well, there you go, then. I think you can safely say the mystery of your missing dress is now fully solved. If she took my dress, how can I ever trust her to be my friend again? Best friends don't do this to each other, do they? How am I going to get my dress back? I can hardly accuse her of being a thief, can I?" "Why not? It's obvious that she's the one who took it," said George. "I'd put money on it. You modelled the dress for her, didn't you? You put it back in your wardrobe, and now it's gone. Do the math, sis. I know you don't want to admit this to yourself, because you love Lily, but she took your dress." Brittany knew that her brother was absolutely right. She didn't want to believe it was true, and that Lily had taken her dress from her. But there was no other explanation as to how it had mysteriously gone missing. She reconciled herself to the idea that she'd have to wear another dress to her grandfather's birthday party, because she knew that she absolutely couldn't accuse Lily of being a thief. Brittany loved Lily so much, but now that Lily had taken her dress, she wondered if their friendship would ever be the same again. Sheila Morris. Sheila was not remotely happy that her daughter Lily had stolen her best friend's dress. She was determined that in some way she and her daughter needed to sneakily get that dress straight back to Brittany, as discreetly as they possibly could. For she certainly didn't want her daughter's friendship with her best friend to go up in plumes of smoke, which is likely what would happen when Brittany connected the dots and realized her best friend Lily had stolen her dress from her. The best solution would be to make Brittany doubt herself, believe that in some way the dress had been in her closet all along, and she had overlooked it, falsely assuming that her best friend Lily had taken it. Sheila Morris was absolutely certain that a girl like Brittany had already noticed that her beloved dress had gone missing, for she was sure that Brittany looked at the dress several times a day. But she was determined to right this wrong as quickly as she possibly could. She was angry and very aggrieved with herself for being the quintessential reason her daughter Lily believed stealing Brittany's dress was a good idea. Sheila had not realized for a single second that Lily knew all about her dirty secret, and that she'd been shoplifting for years. So now her daughter was regretfully following in her example. This needed to be nipped in the bud straight away. In that quintessential moment, Sheila Morris had an epiphany, rather like when a smoker suddenly realizes that the cigarettes they've been smoking over all those years are doing them far too much harm, and they cannot continue to smoke. Or an alcoholic says to himself, "This is going to be my very last drink." They may have told themselves this hundreds of times over, again and again, and never really meant it. For in a moment of weakness, when temptation flares its ugly face, they succumb to its indomitable allure. But this time something inside them is profoundly different. Their resolve is unflinching, their determination is resolute, so much so that they quit smoking for good. Or they quit drinking, without any therapy, they just do it. There are countless testimonies of such people, who one day just say, "It's over now. I can't do this to myself any more." This was certainly how Sheila Morris felt. She knew the days of her shoplifting were well and truly over, and that she would never be tempted to take anything that did not belong to her again. It was really pathetic that she was a fully grown woman, a woman of substantial means, who was getting caught up in these thrill-seeking behaviours that could only end up getting her into serious trouble. Enough was enough. Sheila was not going to do this ever again, especially now that her bad behaviour was influencing her daughter Lily, who had begun to normalise stealing, as she had seen her mother nicking things from shops, and seemed to believe it was a cool thing to do. The last thing Sheila Morris wanted for her daughter was for Lily to one day end up with a criminal record, all because of her unfortunate influences. Sheila knew how easily things could spiral out of control. It might start innocently enough, with her daughter just stealing her friend's dress out of a moment of jealous rage. But later down the line, things could get progressively worse, and her daughter could get involved in something that might involve defrauding people out of large sums of money. God forbid that were ever to happen. The very thought made Sheila's bones begin to rattle in her own body, and a vile taste of nausea overwhelmed the back of her throat. No, this has got to stop, Sheila told herself. Sheila went into her daughter's playroom and collected a large box that was gathering dust, stashed away in the back of the closet. It contained all the supercilious stuff that she had stolen over the years. Sheila decided that she was going to dispose of everything by burying it in the woodgrove in a kind of ritual, in order to say goodbye to this bad habit that very nearly could have earned her a criminal conviction, potentially destroying her marriage with Vince and robbing her daughter of a bright, prosperous future. And so it was, with a large box in her hands, she told Lily to get dressed into some rough outdoor clothes and to go and get a couple of big spades from the yard shed, as they were going to do something very important that they should have done a long time ago. "But where are we going?" asked Lily, when she returned from the yard shed, wearing jeans and a T-shirt, and carrying 2 large spades in her hands. Her mother did not answer her. Her face appeared purposeful and driven, with a determination on it that Lily had never seen before. Her mother was carrying a box of items, of the things she had stolen over the years, that had been hidden in the back of the closet in the playroom. It shook precariously as she walked. Lily gingerly followed her mother into the woods, through where they took an obscure overgrown path in their backyard that traversed behind all the houses on the right-hand side of the street. And if you went through the woods by that way, you could easily take a shortcut to most of the houses, including Brittany's house. Indeed, there had been many times when Brittany and Lily had both taken shortcuts to each other's houses by way of the woods, and it was a far quicker route than walking straight down the street, it would seem. Ostensibly the woods stretched out over an extended area, breaking out into public footpaths for hikers, horse riders and cyclists alike. So the woods were well maintained and easily accessed by anyone living on the street, or members of the public who fancied taking a trail. The main trail was situated at the bottom of the street, that led down a path behind the Jenkins Georgian house, and was clearly marked for the purposes of the public being able to access easily. It had been an age since Lily had last played around in those woods, but she followed her mother down the footpath, wondering what on earth her mother was actually up to. Finally Sheila Morris spoke, interrupting the silence between them. "I'm going to bury this box of things that I've stolen in the woods, in a form of ceremony, to mark the end of my reign of complete nonsensical self-destructive behaviour. It's got to stop, and this is my way of putting an end to it all." "But why?" asked Lily. "If you want to get rid of stuff you stole, couldn't you just throw them in the trash can, like any normal person would. Why do you need to perform a silly old ceremony? This is my way of letting go of my bad behaviour, Lily. I should have abandoned this behaviour a long time ago, Sheila responded. My mother, when she quit smoking, I'll have you know, she buried the gold cigarette lighter my father bought her in the backyard. She never smoked again after that. She said the ritual really worked for her. It was for her like drawing a line in the sand. A lot of people, you know, Lily, perform personal rituals for themselves when they want to abandon a poor life choice of theirs that hasn't served them very well. Some people, with unforgiveness in their hearts, write their grievances on paper. They go into the woods, burn up those grievances. And then, when they see those grievances go up in smoke, well, it's symbolic for them, isn't it? A letting go of things, so to speak. And ironically, such practices really do work, you know.
You mean you're never going to steal again? Asked Lily, her eyebrows raised, and her face displaying an expression of great scepticism, as if she believed her mother was talking nonsense. It was obvious her mother got an absolute thrill from stealing, so why would she give up a habit of a lifetime and go burying her ill-gotten gains in the woods to end this behaviour? It was like burying the ice cream containers you bought from the store and saying that now you were never going to eat ice cream again. How could this possibly work, Lily wondered.
Well, I should have done this a long time ago, Sheila Morris continued. I'm far too old to be stealing. I don't even want the stuff I take. I do it because it gives me a buzz. Do you realise how pathetic it is to get some kind of thrill from taking stuff that doesn't belong to you? Now that you've stolen your best friend's dress, and I realise that I've been a dreadful influence on you, this has got to stop once and for all. This is why you need to be part of this ritual of mine.
But why do we need to go into the woods to bury your stuff? Why not the backyard? Your grandmother thought the backyard was good enough to bury your grandfather's lighter. Can't you do the same?
No, I can't. I want the stuff gone as far away from me as possible. The last thing I want is to bury it too close to the house.
But what if somebody sees us? Said Lily indignantly. Anybody could be riding down that footpath. It's open to the public, you know, and lots of people walk down there. I see them all the time.
Oh, I'm not worried about that, said Sheila Morris indifferently. If anyone comes, we can hide behind some scrub. But I need to do this, Lily, and I need you to help me. We're going to dig a hole together in the ground to bury this box and be done with it once and for all. This insane behaviour has got to stop.
Lily begrudgingly walked beside her mother down the footpath into the woods. This idea of burying a box of the stuff her mother had stolen over the years seemed nonsensical to her. But Lily knew there was no arguing with her mother on this one, because arguing with her mother was futile, as her mother could be obstinate and mulishly stubborn at the very best of times, and she knew when Sheila wanted to do something, wild horses would not be able to stop her. Lily had not been in the woods for a couple of years or so, even though they were so easily accessed by way of the backyard. Sometimes she'd seen horse riders and hikers looking past their house as they sashayed down the trail. Lily walked by her mother's side on this beautiful afternoon that had come to a head, rather like the pus in a boil that is about to burst. This was because her mother had realised that Lily had stolen her best friend's dress, and as a consequence had decided that she would give up stealing for good. So maybe some good had come out of this debacle, but burying a box of stolen things in the woods seemed like a stupid ritual as far as Lily was concerned. Mum, I'd forgotten how beautiful the woods are. I haven't been in here for ages, you know. I do often see hikers from our backyard trekking past our home, but I never think of taking a walk in the woodgrove myself. It's lovely in here. I used to play here all the time with Brittany, and we had the time of our lives. We used to sometimes take old Mr. Brennan's dog Murdoch for a walk. He was a spaniel mix. He loved those walks in the woods. He could put his nose on the ground and get excited by all the unusual smells he'd encounter. He'd lift his leg over everything so that he could leave his scent signature behind him. It would make us laugh so much.
Oh, I do remember that dog, said Sheila, smiling fondly. You loved him, didn't you?" "I sure did. And I liked Mr. Murdoch as well. He was a very nice man. He doesn't live in the area anymore. I wonder if his dog's alive." "I don't see why his dog isn't still alive. I mean, it was about 3 years ago or so, wasn't it? I just hope he's happy where he's living now. But you're right, love. It is lovely in here," said Sheila, marching forward with her box in her hands. She glanced around appreciatively at the viridescent green fauna and flora. It was all so prepossessing, and a soft ethereal light spilled through the canopy, dappling everything in a very pretty golden glaze, while a confetti of fallen leaves from the previous fall covered the footpath resplendently. All was quiet and serenely still, apart from the pretty trills of the bird-song, of course. Sheila Morris felt reasonably confident that they were very much alone, for there was no sign of ramblers, cyclists, or horse riders alike on the trail. She pointed to a tree, putting down the box she was carrying, which she placed on the ground. "That's the perfect spot over there." Sheila pointed to a flat piece of earth, covered with fallen leaves, 3 feet away from a tall, lofty tree. She got onto her hands and knees to examine the ground, and realizing it was both fertile and soft to the touch, she knew it wouldn't be difficult to dig a hole in there. "Let's get started, shall we? This is the perfect spot," said Sheila. Soon Sheila and her daughter began to dig away at the ground. Even though it was soft, it was still hard work digging up all that soft earth. But Lily gritted her teeth together. She didn't want to be complaining to her mother. All of a sudden, the bird song seemed to dissipate. The woods grew alarmingly quiet, so much so that Lily became very disquieted. She had never known the woods to be this airily quiet. So much so, it was haunting. It would seem her mother had not noticed the change in atmosphere, which was so dramatic. Instead, she seemed entirely focused on the job at hand, and digging a hole big enough to bury the box. "Ma'am," said Lily, "I think someone might be watching us. It feels spooky in here, don't you think? I think everything suddenly got a lot darker." Sheila frowned. She glanced to the left and right, and gave her daughter a wary look. "I know you don't appreciate me offloading my ill-gotten gains in the woods like this, Lily. I can see you're very frustrated by the expression on your face. But I'm doing this, Lily, and I don't need you to try and discourage me by stirring the porridge up. No one is around. No one is watching us. Get that preposterous idea out of your head." Sweat was breaking out on Lily's brow. The digging was exhausting. The ground wasn't as soft and yielding as her mother had initially claimed it would be, for the deeper they dug, the more awkward it became, for they hit some burgeoning roots that created obstacles in the ground. But Lily Morris was not discouraged by any of this. She broke down the roots with the back of her spade and threw them across the woodland floor, where they became hidden by the rambling undergrowth. Lily was now hit with the overwhelming, impenetrable sense that something or someone was watching them. But she knew voicing these concerns with her mother would not go down well with her. Her mother seemed so intent on getting on with the ritual that she was about to perform. Finally, Sheila Morris said, "Well, I think that's deep enough, don't you? At last we can bury that box of mine." Sheila's face was sweating, and she wiped the perspiration from her face. Her breathing was rather laboured. She wasn't as strong as she would have liked to have been. Lily watched her mother lowering the box, containing all the ill-gotten gains she had stolen over the years, from teddy bears to kitchen gadgets, children's toys, and the list goes on. Once the box was in the ground, Sheila Morris looked up towards the forest canopy. "God, if you are real, I'm very sorry for all the stealing I've been doing over the years. I'm very ashamed of myself. I do know it was wrong. I repent of my thrill-seeking behaviour. I didn't do it to hurt anyone, as long as you know that. But it seems like not only did I hurt myself, but I hurt my daughter as well. I pray God that she'll never be tempted to follow my bad example. I am burying these things in the ground so I can let go of the past and begin again. I can choose to let go of my bad choices, so I'm going to embrace a brand new beginning for myself." As Sheila Morris was uttering these words, Lily found the very back of her neck began to prickle like electricity. She was now absolutely certain someone was watching them. She quickly turned around,
And then she saw him. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. It was a huge, gargantuan male Bigfoot, with jaw-droppingly large shoulders, and a robust, powerful body, the likes of such Lily had never seen before. The Bigfoot was covered with long, flowing dark hair, and was staring at her through dark, treacle-coloured eyes that looked both inquisitive and curious. If Lily was to read his body language, he'd likely have been saying, "What are you doing?" For a moment Lily locked eyes with the male Bigfoot. She was drawn into those eyes because she couldn't look away. She wanted to scream and shout out, as the Bigfoot was so enormous, and possibly the most intimidating thing she'd ever seen in her entire life. She blinked for a brief second, almost as if she was willing the Bigfoot away, and when she looked up again, the Bigfoot was all but gone. In that quintessential moment, she really did wonder if she'd imagined the Bigfoot. But it had seemed so real. Everything had happened so incredibly fast. In 1 minute the Bigfoot was there, and in the next it was gone. Lily began to doubt what she had seen. The imagination was a powerful thing, and besides, Bigfoots weren't real, were they, she thought. She knew better than to mention what she thought she had seen to her mother, for she was certain her mother would believe she was making it all up, just to scare her off from performing the ritual. No, it was best not to say anything at all, as she didn't want to upset her mother. She'd upset her enough that entire day. Lily noticed that once they had filled the hole up and covered it up with leaves, that her mother's demeanour changed almost instantaneously. She looked a whole lot happier, almost as if a huge weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Lily realised in that profound moment that her mother really had put her days of shoplifting behind her. When they both returned home, Lily was in for another surprise. Her mother yet again had a wacko idea. An idea that was so incredibly high risk, Lily couldn't believe her mother was actually entertaining it. "I want to ask you a very important question, Lily, love. And I want you to think about it very, very carefully. How important is your friendship with Brittany?" Lily thought that was a stupid question for her mother to ask. Her mother knew perfectly well that Brittany was like a sister to her, and her friendship with Brittany meant the entire world. Lily frowned. "Ask a stupid question, Mum, will you? You know Brittany's my best friend." "Who you're about to lose, I might point out," said Sheila candidly, "because of what you foolishly did today, when you stole your best friend's beautiful party dress. I believe Brittany knows very well that you have taken it. She's not stupid, you know. And there's a big chance the damage has already been done, and that your friendship with her will never be the same again, because of what you did." "Please don't say that, Mum. You're scaring me half to death. I want to make things right with Brittany. I don't want to lose her friendship." "Well, you should have thought about that, love, before you stole her dress. Goodness gracious me. Hindsight is a very unfortunate thing, I find, and I know more about it than most people. I'm reasonably optimistic that we can undo the damage, providing, of course, we're extremely careful. Now think about this carefully, love. Is there any way we can get into Lily's house? Is there a window, perhaps, that is left open? They don't have an alarm system, do they, by any chance?" "No, they don't have an alarm," Lily admitted. "There is a window you can access from the laundry room. It's always open. I know this because one night when everyone was fast asleep, me and Lily sneaked out of the house for a while to light up sparklers in the backyard. Her parents never found out. It was very easy to access that window." "You think it will be open, do you, tonight?" asked Sheila. "Yes, I think so," said Lily. "I think Mrs. Jenkins likes to air the laundry room all the time, and she forgets to close the window. It's on the ground floor, and big enough to crawl through. It's easy to access. It's actually a weak spot in their house, that if they overlook, could potentially mean that they get burgled. What are you suggesting, Mum? You're not going to break into their house, are you? That's a crazy idea. I'd rather come clean to Brittany about what I did than do that." "What? And sabotage your relationship for good? I don't think so, love. A bad idea as far as I'm concerned. I have a plan, and I think it might just work, providing, as I keep saying, that we're careful. You see, sweetheart, if you went back with Lily tomorrow morning after school,
And then she finds her dress again. She'll know you put it back. She'll know you stole it. But if her dress just appears in the morning and she hasn't seen you in the house, then in some way she'll think she overlooked it and it must have been there all along. She won't connect you with the fact that the dress has reappeared again. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Lily didn't like the sound of any of this. Her mother always came up with these preposterous ideas, but now she was asking Lily about an open window in the Jenkins house, and whether they had an alarm system. What on earth was her mother planning to do, she wondered. She didn't like the sound of any of this.
Well, I will tell you what my plan is. I've decided that tonight at about midnight we'll take a shortcut through the woods to the Jenkins house. And then you're going to climb through that laundry room window yourself. I'm not going to do it. I'm bigger than you. And you're going to sneak up that staircase very, very quietly and find your way into Lily's bedroom. And you're going to replace that dress in her closet. But you're going to have to be very careful. You don't want to make a single sound. And when you enter her bedroom, you're going to have to make sure that you are super quiet.
But, Mum, what if I get caught? What then?
Then you're going to have to come clean to both Brittany and the Jenkins and tell them exactly what you did. And explain you were returning the dress in the middle of the night because you felt so bad, so ridden with guilt. But I'm hoping it will not come to that for you. You haven't got a choice, love. You're going to have to be very quiet.
Mum, this is a very, very bad idea.
No, it's not. It might just work, love, providing you are discreet. We're in this together. I have your back, and I'm trying to help you save your friendship with Brittany, which I believe is worth saving. I'm also interested, as it happens, in saving my friendship with Amber Jenkins. If she thinks for a second you took her daughter's dress, that might actually sever my own friendship with her. I don't know if you even thought of that.
It was at about midnight that Lily found herself being chivied out of bed by her mother, who had insisted she slept in her clothes. Before she knew it, they were outside, facing the cool night air. Sheila's mother had given her husband Vince some sleeping tablets that evening in his hot chocolate before he retired to bed, to ensure he wasn't awakened by their nocturnal activities. According to Lily's mother, her husband was snoring like a bulldog, lying contentedly fast asleep on the bed, dead to this world, and would probably not rise for several hours, for the tablets had worked a treat. Sheila led the way down the woodland path to the Jenkins house, lighting the way up with a bright torch, but navigating the woods at night was not for the faint-hearted by any manner of means. Lily tried her level best not to think of the Bigfoot she believed she might have seen earlier on in the day. What if the Bigfoot had not been a figment of her imagination? "Don't go there," she told herself. "You'll scare yourself half to death. Of course he wasn't real, and of course he's not around." The woodgrove was alive with the sounds of crickets and frogs, but it was creepy and rather sinister walking through the woods at night, when anything could be out there, for the darkness hid the nightly predators behind its ambiguously dark veil. This ludicrous idea of Lily's mother's was insane, but Lily knew nevertheless she was going to have to go through with it. She'd do anything to save her friendship with Brittany, and if her mother's plan actually worked, then it would be well worth their while. Lily had heard of people who had been cleaned out by thieves while they slept, waking up hours later to find everything all but gone, for they had not heard a single thing during the night. If burglars could indeed steal in the dead of night, without waking up the house's occupants, then there was a good chance that Lily could do the same. The woodgrove got progressively darker and darker as they walked deeper into the woods, and only a small spillage of moonlight pirouetted through the trees. So without their torchlight it would have been impossible to see their way clearly to the Jenkins house. Lily nearly jumped out of her skin when she heard an owl hoot and a sudden flapping of wings above her head, and a while later a couple of raccoons with bright yellow eyes went scrambling past them, the moment they realized they'd been seen.
"Hurry up, love," said Sheila Morris, urging her daughter to stop dawdling. "The sooner we get this done, the better, and the sooner you'll be back at home in your comfortable bed."
"But it's so creepy in the woods,"
said Lily. "I feel as if we're being watched all the time." "Don't be ridiculous, love. Your imagination is getting the better of you. Of course walking around in the darkness is intimidating. It's perfectly natural for it to be like that. But focus on what you're doing, and then you won't be scared."
Lily felt as if she was caught up in a dream when she found herself being lifted up into the laundry window by her mother. Lily was standing on the Jenkins washing machine, which creaked awkwardly under her feet, but she slipped very quietly to the floor. "I'm inside, Mum," she whispered. Her mother quickly passed her Brittany's folded dress. "Now be very quiet," Sheila informed her daughter. "You can't afford to wake up any members of the Jenkins household. Do you understand that? I'm relying on you to be very discreet. I'll be waiting for you out here. Don't forget to put the dress in Lily's wardrobe. Throw it to the very back, so she thinks it slipped off a hanger. Be fast about it, will you?" Lily felt like a trapped animal the moment her feet hit the laundry room floor. She could feel her heart pulsating wildly in her chest. She'd never felt it boom like that before. She tiptoed out of the laundry room and down the passageway. The house was entrenched in darkness. It was very difficult to see her way ahead. But luckily Lily knew the Jenkins household rather like the back of her hand, so she knew exactly where she was going. When she reached the ornate staircase, her heart began to beat erratically. She was certain she was about to have a heart attack. When the grandfather clock abruptly disturbed the serenity as it chimed 12:15, Lily nearly jumped out of her skin. Slowly but surely she tiptoed up every single step of the staircase, but the creaking noise it made was terrifying. Lily was absolutely certain someone would hear her, but all remained stoically quiet and blissfully still. All of a sudden something came flying past her down the staircase, and for a second Lily almost screamed, but she realized it was a household tabby, who appeared to have a dead mouse dangling out of his jaws, and paid Lily no heed as he dashed to the bottom step and began feasting on the mouse that he had caught, leaving a carnage of blood and guts everywhere. Lily could hear the sounds of bones being chomped and crunched, and she inwardly squirmed with disgust. Did the Jenkins even know what their murderous tabby got up to at the dead of night? She seriously doubted it. The floorboards creaked precariously as Lily made her way down the passageway past George's bedroom, where the door was slightly ajar, and she could hear his faint snores. Then she tiptoed past the Jenkins' bedroom, praying in her heart she'd not be caught by any of the Jenkins, most especially Mr. Jenkins, who kept a revolver in his bedside drawer. Finally she reached Brittany's bedroom. She stood there in the doorway, drew in a deep breath. "You can do this," she told herself. "You can do this! You can do this, Lily! And you have to!" Lily could hear her friend gently snoring, and knew she was fast asleep. Lily manoeuvred herself through the door as quietly as she possibly could, squeezing her body so that no part made contact with the wood. Lily held her breath as she glanced towards Brittany's bed, sighing with relief as she could see that her friend was fast asleep, her arms stretched out over a pillow. For a moment Brittany's body turned. She shifted under the covers, and Lily was terrified that she was going to wake up and see her standing there. Lily stood there on the floor, not daring to move an inch. In a burst of unbridled courage, she quickly tiptoed towards the closet, willing herself to open the door without making a sound. It creaked. Lily quickly glanced over to Brittany's bed, but her friend remained undisturbed. Lily threw the dress to the far corner of the closet, hoping that when Brittany discovered it, she'd think it had fallen off a hanger and dropped onto the closet floor. Lily didn't know how she managed to make it down the staircase again, and finally outside the laundry window, where her mother gave her a helping hand to the ground. Lily gave her mother the thumbs-up sign, saying all was well, and her mother's expression, in the light of her torch, was one of profound relief. In that quintessential moment, Lily absolutely knew that this would be the first and last time that she ever took anything that was not hers. It was a lesson well worth learning. If Lily thought for a single moment her adventure was over, now that she was safely back on terra firma, and all appeared to be well, for she was safe, and now she could go straight back home without worrying about a single thing any more. But the adventure of this night was not over yet. And little did she realize this would be a night that would be indelibly seared into her memory for the rest of her life. Soon Lily and her mother Sheila were ambling down the woodland trail, going back the way they'd initially come. Lily had grown accustomed to the darkness by now, and no longer felt intimidated by it, even though a slight breeze was blowing against her skin, which was causing the branches of the tall, lofty trees to shake precariously, and the leaves to rustle, so that it sounded almost as if the trees among themselves were whispering to each other. All Lily could think about was how absolutely relieved she was to have returned Brittany's dress back to her safely. Neither Lily or her mother Sheila appeared to notice or observe that the atmosphere in the woods had changed beyond recognition, almost as if they'd slipped through a wormhole and accessed another woodland trail in an alternative reality. Both Lily and her mother were entertaining thoughts of such relief, and it was these thoughts that kept them from being aware of the changes in the wood, that a more alert individual would have been quick to pick up on. The woods certainly had changed. Everything had grown exceedingly quiet, so much so that the only sounds you could hear were their boots pulverizing the forest floor, where the occasional twig would snap under their rubber soles. The sounds of the crickets and frogs had gone completely mute again. Sheila Morris's torch boldly lit up the path ahead of her, but the moonlight that had spilled through the trees during their previous walk appeared to have been cruelly expunged, almost as if a powerful night light had blown a massive fuse, for everything had become inauspiciously dark. All of a sudden they arrived at the spot where Sheila and Lily had buried her mother's ill-gotten gains in a large cardboard box, but the ground had been dug up, and the box had been recovered. It was sitting under the tree, filled to the brim with all the stuff Sheila had stolen, although some had spilled out onto the forest floor, where you could see a pair of leather gloves, a pretty scarf, and a few boxes of makeup on display. "Oh, goodness gracious me! Look at this, Lily! I can't believe it!" said Sheila, standing on the trail, shining her torch on the box that had been buried earlier on in the afternoon. Now her dirty secrets were cruelly exposed, that had been safely concealed under the ground. They were plain to see. Sheila felt a panic rising up in her heart, and a dreadful taste of nausea welling up in the back of her throat. Who could possibly have done this? Someone must have been watching her when she buried this box of stolen treasure, and had unearthed it. But then why would they do a thing like that? Lily was equally as stumped to see that her mother's box had been unearthed like this. "Who did this, Mum? I don't understand. It makes no sense." "I buried all the stuff in our ritual, did I not, Lily? But someone has unearthed it. Who has done this?" "I don't know," said Lily, thinking about the Bigfoot she had seen. Was it possible he could have dug up the treasure, she wondered. "Well, I can't leave the box here, can I, love? I'd better take it back to the house and hide it back in the closet in the playroom for the time being. But I hope no one saw us burying it. I don't know what I would do if they did." "Well, even if they did see us bury it," said Lily, "no one would ever know it was stuff you stole, Mum." "Well, that's a true enough point, love. I hadn't thought of it like that. Even if someone did see me burying it, they wouldn't know where it came from. But even so, you're right, Lily. Perhaps I shouldn't have disposed of everything in the woodgrove. Instead, I should have put it in the dumpster and been done with it." "Mum, it was good you did the ritual," Lily insisted, "because you've put your thieving practices behind you for good. And the ritual was a way of saying goodbye to that way of life. You said so yourself." "Well, I suppose you're right, love. It felt good to perform that ritual. But even so, I'm going to take the box straight back home and dispose of this stuff at the first opportunity I get." Sheila reluctantly picked up the box, while Lily guided the way back down the footpath as she took charge over the torch. All of a sudden they heard a whooping sound, and then powerful feet pounding the ground, rushing towards them at the speed of a freight train. But whatever was coming towards them had to be humongous in both size and stature. The whooping continued, echoing across the grove like some kind of mysterious coded communication. "Did you hear that, love? What is it? What are those sounds?" she asked her daughter, with a raised brow and terror written in her eyes. Sheila asked her daughter to shine the torch behind her, to see if they could see anything. and that was when they saw a shadowy silhouette moving towards them. In that vital second, Sheila Morris's mouth dropped wide open, and she began to see stars. This was all too much for her. She was sure she was suspended in an alternative reality. Either that, or she had to be dreaming. Lily's torch lit up the way, and they could see the face of a Herculean-sized Bigfoot that was whooping loudly as it ran towards them. This thing was monstrous in size, and Sheila was filled with the most terrible fear that was so incredibly crippling that it anchored her firmly to the ground, so much so that her whole body felt paralyzed from the neck down. Lily Morris wanted to scream on her mother's behalf, because she saw her mother as a sitting duck, as the Bigfoot appeared to be making strides towards her mother. She stood rigidly on the footpath watching her mother, her eyes widening in disbelief, as the Bigfoot made its approach. Lily screamed, "Mum, run! Mum, run!" But Sheila Morris's legs refused to oblige her. They felt like concrete blocks beneath her. She could not move. She had become like an engine that had lost its steam. She screamed to her daughter to go, for Sheila knew in this quintessential moment that her life was well and truly over, and at least if the Bigfoot got her, then her daughter would be spared, and that was all that mattered at the end of the day. Lily began to run, but she was sobbing loudly as she did so, as if resigned to the fact that she'd never ever see her mother again. Moments later, a pair of large, powerful hands grabbed Sheila. She closed her eyes tightly, praying to God that her life would be over quickly, and she'd feel as little pain as possible. The box Sheila was carrying slipped out of her hands, crashing to the forest floor with a mighty thump. The big hands were no longer on Sheila. She gingerly opened her eyes one at a time. She'd expected the powerful Bigfoot to wrestle her to the ground, but instead the Bigfoot wasn't even paying her any attention, but was scrambling through the box, throwing out all the things Sheila had stolen onto the forest floor. And then the Bigfoot found what it was looking for, a black velvet bag. He whooped excitedly as he opened it and looked inside the bag, pulling out marbles, one after another, to examine them closely. Sheila remembered stealing those marbles from a toy store, and they were very beautiful. Even she had to admit that. The Bigfoot let out a loud, triumphant whooping sound, and the woodgrove was filled with whoops that responded in kind, as if some kind of signalling was going on. The Bigfoot then grabbed the black velvet bag of marbles and ran straight back into the woods, not even giving Sheila a second glance. Sheila had been certain the Bigfoot was about to kill her, but she had been wrong about that. He was only after the bag of marbles. Sheila began to cry in relief. Tears glided down her cheeks, which she wiped away. She'd never been so grateful to be alive. She straightened herself out and wobbled back to the house rather precariously, as her right leg was giving her trouble. It felt stiff and sore. She retrieved the stuff she'd stolen from the forest floor, replacing it carefully back into the box, and made her way back home. But her walking was laboured, as every single muscle in her entire body ached. She was exhausted and fatigued. The adrenaline rush of being chased by a huge male Bigfoot, of easily over 9 foot tall, had been too much for her heart to take. But now she was sure in the morning she'd drop off all her ill-gotten gains in a dumpster and put the stealing behind her for good. When she got home, Lily was in such a state, and was about to wake up her father to tell him that she thought that her mother might be dead. But when she saw her mother returning back to the house safely, hobbling on her right leg, she was all but ecstatic, and could not believe her mother was still alive. "I thought you were dead, Mum," said Lily, throwing herself lovingly into her mother's arms and sobbing into her shoulders. "I thought you were dead. That thing, I thought it was going to kill you. It was charging straight towards you and whooping so loudly." "I also thought I was dead, love. I was scared, let me tell you. I couldn't move an inch. That's why I told you to run. I closed my eyes as the creature grabbed me. I was praying for a quick death, I have to tell you. But it wasn't me the Bigfoot was after, was it? The Bigfoot was after a bag of marbles that was in the box. It took the marbles and ran. It must have taken the box that we'd buried under the ground and gone through all that stuff, deciding what he wanted, and he liked the marbles and the velvety black bag. So when I took the box away, I guess he panicked. He didn't want to lose those lovely marbles. It would be funny if that Bigfoot hadn't scared me half to death." It was many years later that Brittany confided in her best friend Lily and told her that on the night she had broken into their house, she had heard her wardrobe creak open, and she'd looked up to see Lily's familiar shape in her room, and she realized in horror that Lily had broken into her house to return her dress. "When I realized you'd gone to so much trouble to return my party dress, I knew you regretted what you'd done and didn't want to do anything to sabotage our friendship, and it was because of that I decided to overlook what had happened, because I didn't want to lose our friendship either." "But why didn't you say anything at the time?" Lily had asked. "Because, like you, I wanted to remain friends. But now I'm telling you that I know, because that's all water under the bridge now." Suffice to say, Sheila Morris really did give up shoplifting for good. She turned her interest into playing with cards and is now a very successful bridge player. So there you are. That's my story.
Well, hello there. I hope you enjoyed the Omnibus edition. We've got many more coming our way for you to listen to. Sending you love wherever you are in the world, in North America, Canada, Kenya, wherever you may be. I send you lots and lots of love. Thank you for listening to my Omnibus, and I really do hope you enjoyed it, because that's the whole idea about it, is to give you some interesting stories to listen to. So until next time, goodbye and good night.